Good evening, everyone. The feed is live now, so we're out on Bulldog TV and on YouTube, and we checked out WebEx, so we know we can talk with our board members that aren't present in the room. And so at this time, I'd like to call to order the study session of the Mahomet-Seymour Board of Education. It's 7:01 p.m. on Monday, August 3rd. At this time, I'd like to remind anyone attending in person, please sign in, especially if you're a visitor. I'd like everyone to silence their phones, and I'd like to remind our visitors that in order to facilitate an effective meeting, we ask those who wish to make comments to the board to read the visitor guidelines found outside the door, complete the attached public participation form, and tonight we will not be giving them to Dawn, we'll be giving them to Nicole, who's filling in for Dawn. So we appreciate Nicole doing that for us tonight. And if you want to speak, I've already got a form or two, and then we'll go from there. So could we get a roll call, please?
Giles?
Here.
Steve? Pete?
Ken, are you still here?
Yes, I'm present. Can you hear me?
Yeah, now we can.
Here? Okay, Hendra?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, Ken, we can hear you. Can you hear us?
Schultz?
Here.
Larson? Here. Hennessy?
Here.
McCall?
Here, and let's stand for the pledge, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Board members, you have seen the agenda for tonight's meeting. I would entertain a motion to approve the agenda as it's presented. So moved. Got a motion by Jeremy to do that. Is there a second?
Second.
That's Lori. Is there discussion on the agenda?
I would like to amend the agenda to include a discussion of board policy on the agenda, please.
Couldn't hear what you said.
A discussion of board policy on Colleen, we lost it.
Sorry, I move to amend the agenda to include a section, a discussion section on board policy.
Okay. Could you be a little more specific about what the word policy you want to talk about?
I just want to make a proposal for board policy in a discussion item.
Okay. Discussion item, yeah.
Can there be discussion about that proposal?
If it's seconded, we can discuss it.
Okay.
Is there a second to the amendment?
This is Ken. I'll second.
Okay. Discussion on that.
My discussion would be that there are two of us that are present as members of the policy committee, and you didn't even come and talk to the committee about it. So I guess I just am a little thrown off that why we wouldn't have done that. I'd like to know what we're going to talk about so I can be prepared.
I'm not proposing that we take any votes on anything at this meeting. Just a discussion does not stop the policy committee from having a meeting and doing further discussion.
Okay. Is this something that's come up since the agenda was printed, or is the reason we couldn't get it on the agenda?
Yes, I just decided today that I would discuss it.
Okay. Any other questions on the amendment?
And I would just like to say that, I mean, we have committees in place for a reason. It seems to me that you would vet things through a committee before you take it before the board, because that's what the committee purpose I thought was. But that's all I was going to say.
Okay, so we're voting on adding that item to the agenda. Because we've got to vote on the amendment before we can vote on the first motion. So this is and all the votes will be roll call because we've got people on the WebEx. So is there any other discussion on the amendment? Okay, so this is a vote on whether or not we're adding that item.
Okay, Hennessy,
Yes.
Schultz,
Yes.
Keith,
Yes.
Giles, Pat,
Yes.
Henry,
No.
Larson,
No.
McCall.
No, but it carries. So we would amend that, and that would be item, well, it'd be the last item on the agenda. It'd be item 12A, I guess.
Thank you.
Okay.
Hey, Max.
So now we've got a motion on the floor again to approve the agenda.
Hey, Max.
Is there, yes?
I don't know if we need to make an agenda or a motion to do this, but can we combine the two COVID topics? I feel like they're pretty related, and let's just do it all at once instead of splitting it
There
up.
was a request specifically by a board member to have number 12 there as a standalone item.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
A board member requested item number 12 as a standalone item.
The COVID updates?
Yes.
But I also requested that it would be an action item and you denied that, so.
Well, the action discussion doesn't really matter, but okay, I'll just leave it as it then. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay.
I would just like to clarify too that you said 12A, but mine is not under COVID.
No, 12 and a half then, 12.5.
Okay,
It's the
thank you.
last item prior to communication from visitors. It's a separate item.
Thank you.
Yep. We have any other discussion on the agenda? A roll call vote on the agenda, please.
Larson,
Yes.
Henry,
Yes.
Giles,
Yes.
Hennessy,
Yes.
Keith,
Yes?
Schultz,
Yes.
McCall.
Yes, all right. Do we have any other public participation forums?
Just, we have one on WebEx and then I've got
A few to read.
here.
Okay.
Nicole, there's actually 3 people on WebEx, I believe,
Okay.
who want to comment publicly.
Okay.
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 Of the top row from what we see. There you go.
Okay. So we've got one person here to speak live. We've got 3 on WebEx, and then we have some comments to read. Let's start with the 3 on WebEx. I guess we'll start. Do you have a list or not?
I just have my.
Go ahead, Michelle Ziplover.
Mrs. Culver's on you.
Thank you. I know I'm unmuted now. Thank you so much to the board for allowing me to speak tonight. And there are a couple. I wanted to also thank you for addressing the anti-racism tonight in the board meeting in advance. Most of my experience came from the To Kill a Mockingbird unit. And I'd like to first share with you the I guess the end game, because the last thing that they did was a T for Tom. And if I could share with you what was required of the students, and maybe you can understand why the anti-racism agenda is a little bit, is a lot necessary right now. Because right now, my children do not want to come back to Mahomet because of this. So, and I'm reading directly from the invitation for the T for Tom. You're cordially invited for the T for Tom on, and it didn't have a date. Please plan on attending to share your remembrances of Tom and offer support to Helen and her family. Your responsibilities, 30 points total. From the class novel, assume the identity of one of the characters for the T. Come dressed as your character, 10 points. Characters chosen randomly. Complete a writing assignment as that same character, 10 points. Contribute to the T, 10 points. Sign up quickly for the first choice. Participation requirements. Food. Bring a homemade Southern or Depression era dish to share with your class. Must be nut-free and able to be stored without school-required heat or refrigeration for an extended period of time. If there are severe allergies, please notify us ASAP. If bringing the food is a problem or financial hardship, contact me immediately. Attire. You do not need to go out and buy clothes. You have several weeks to look through closets, borrow from friends or family, etc. Your clothing needs to look close to what your character would have worn in the 1930s in To Kill a Mockingbird. We will discuss options in class, and you'll be finding pictures. Please make an effort. But this does not need to cost any money. However, Goodwill, consignment stores are good options to look at. Research Southern or Depression era foods. Decide on a dish or food that you want to bring for the tea. You will need to link to your resource, the recipe or where you found this dish to show that it is a Southern or Depression era food. It needs to be something you can make, not something straight out of a box or a jar. Attire. Research attire clothing for your character. Is your character a man or a woman? What is their occupation? Are they rich or poor? What do they spend a majority of their day doing? Find a picture of someone from this time era wearing an outfit similar to what you plan to wear to the T. Include both of these items in the Google Doc. Writing assignment. As your character, you will need to write a 3-paragraph letter to Helen showing your support or offering condolences. Include in the first paragraph, express sympathy, acknowledge Helen's loss, and refer to the deceased by name. Express true emotion, sympathy, hope, encouragement, or support. Second paragraph, say something personal about you, your connection to Tom or Helen. Express your true emotion, sympathy, hope, encouragement, support. Include one fact about Tom, such as any special qualities or strength he had, or your favorite memory of the deceased. Final paragraph, include one fact about your character and how your role affected the events of this story. Offer sincere, specific help. Specific help. And then it goes on to a sample letter, and I don't think it's necessary to read that. But I said all that to say that if that was the end assignment of this model, of this unit, I'm trying to find out what was actually learned in that unit. Now, I'm not saying ban the book. That's already been done several times. But what I'm saying is what they're learning here is racism. It was said that anti-racism should be taught at home, but we're teaching racism in school. I'm having a hard time understanding why it's so hard to put that on this agenda in the schools. And that's pretty much all I have to say.
All right. Thank you. Next is Maggie Kinnaman. Remind everybody there is a 5-minute time, and we will try to cue you when you've got a minute left. Did you go now?
Okay, hi, can you hear me? Okay. I would just like to say a few words about the topic of beginning the work of embedding anti-racist education into the curriculum at all grade levels in the Mahomet-Seymour school system. I have spoken about this in past school board meetings, and since then, many other community members have delivered similar messages. I'm very glad to know that this topic is on the agenda for tonight's meeting. I do acknowledge that the global pandemic has put schools into a tailspin. I'm a public school teacher myself, and I fully understand every aspect of how this pandemic has turned things upside down for everyone involved in education. I am desperately trying to figure out how I will teach my classes effectively through Zoom in a couple of weeks. But the reality is that we have no way of knowing how long we will be dealing with the issues of COVID, and we cannot delay addressing the important issues of racial equity and anti-racist education. I realize this will be ongoing work. It will not happen overnight. It will unfold gradually, but it can and should at least begin now. In June, a letter was submitted to the school board that was written by a group of Mahomet-Seymour alums. And in my opinion, this letter was especially important because it came from a group of people who have discovered after they left Mahomet for college and the workforce that they were not prepared to notice, discern, and engage in discussion about social injustices that have been in place throughout history and that are now being highlighted daily in our current society. The authors of the letter stated that they were not prepared to enter a diverse global workforce. In Mahomet, we are very proud of our school system. Many people move to this community mainly because Mahomet has a reputation of great schools. If we truly value the education our children receive, then it is critical that we prepare them for the world ahead of them through an education which prioritizes inclusion and social justice. There are a plethora of resources available to help guide our district in this work. Many other school districts all over the country and locally have in this kind of work, for some for many years, and some are just beginning. We owe it to our students to get on board and join in with what other schools are doing. I believe a crucial beginning point is implementing ongoing, long-term racial equity training for teachers and all school staff. I have been a part of this kind of teacher education through my school district for many years, and it still continues. I have learned so much. As adults, we have to seek out this kind of education because we were all victims of incomplete, inaccurate, and white-centered education. We owe it to our students to give them the education we did not get. We must give them high-quality, justice-oriented curriculum. In summary, let's make our great schools even better. Thank you.
Thanks, Maggie.
Thank you, Maggie. Next up, Susan Jackson.
Hello. Thank you again for putting the anti-racism plan on the agenda for tonight. And I was just going to read the letter that I submitted to the board. I said that I am writing today to express my deep concern that meaningful steps towards ending practices that uphold racist beliefs and building an inclusive and equitable school culture have yet to be taken by the Mahomet School Board District or Mahomet-Seymour School District. I know these are difficult times and our focus is pulled in many directions, but as leaders in our community, it is essential that you do not continue to sit in silence. This silence is not only a barrier to change, it also sends a message to others that this is not our problem and that we are above the work needed to gain social justice for all. I'm asking you today to take the following steps towards change. I'm asking that the board immediately accept the anti-racism resolution given by the alumni. I'm also asking that the board initiate a board level committee, including board members, district administration, teachers, social workers, and community members who will address anti-racism action in the schools. And I would ask for a date that this committee will meet prior to the start of the 2021 school year. I would like to request the board direct the superintendent and district to publicly announce specific dates that teachers will receive training around anti-racism. Develop and announce a comprehensive statement that encompasses the anti-racism beliefs of our district and our community. I'm asking that you develop and support district and building committees to address issues of diversity and inclusion in our schools, utilizing the guidelines highlighted by the alumni recommendations, including things like climate survey, curriculum review, and a development of school groups to support students of color. And also asking that you conduct a full review of the code of conduct to ensure that anti-racist expectations are clearly stated and enforced, and that those expectations are taught to staff and students regularly. I appreciate you making this a priority, and I look forward to the change in our school community.
Thank you, Susan.
Thank you, Susan. All right, and in the room tonight, we have Dennis Kenny. And Dennis, you can go to the stand if you like.
Can I drop this?
You can while you're speaking.
Long enough, I won't see what's
I understand.
That may be a good thing. I don't know. Okay, thank you.
Uh-huh.
Good evening to all of you. My wife and I have lived in Mahomet for 32 years. Our 3 children attended outstanding Mahomet-Seymour schools and are now successful adults working in Chicago and Norfolk, Virginia. We were frequent school volunteers, including my vice directorship of the Mahomet-Seymour Education Foundation. We continue to support all Mahomet-Seymour children through our active involvement with MACI. We believe that all people should be treated fairly. However, I'm deeply concerned about the implications of the proposed anti-racism resolution. First, I'm concerned that such a resolution is even being considered. We do not have a racist school district. We should not have to prove this, especially for making the kinds of educational irrelevant statements demanded in the June 6 alumni protest letter, demands the anonymous authors justified by quoting, interestingly, Angela Davis, a lifelong communist. My second concern is the resolution statement that the board has the unequivocal belief that systemic racism in American society is real. It is inappropriate to make such a charged, broad, and educationally irrelevant statement. Plus, it's highly debatable. Consider the specific example of my field, criminal justice. While at the university and in private practice, I consulted with more than 250 jurisdictions nationwide. I know the reasons for the systemic racism charge, and that it's meant to be a sweeping indictment of the entire American justice system. The charge is used to justify radical and unrealistic calls for defunding the police and abolishing prisons. After 43 years of working with local justice systems, I know that while there are issues on the edges, aligning oneself with the simplistic and wholesale charge of systemic racism is both wrong and harmful. I believe that this conclusion applies equally to the resolution's indiscriminate indictment of American society. My third concern is that the resolution links hired staff to racial considerations. Ironically, doing so seems racist because it suggests hiring based on skin color rather than merit. Successful merit-based hiring has made our school district strong. Martin Luther King Jr. advocated this approach when he rightfully asked that people be judged by the content of their character and not the color of their skin. My fourth concern is that the resolution takes a disturbingly deep dive into the ideological weeds when it highlights issues like power and privilege. White privilege in the social justice context pushed by the June 6 letter is a racist concept. It lumps all whites together and then stereotypes them as people whose attainments derive from their skin color. I'm afraid this language insults the hardworking families of our community, families that have prospered because of lifetimes of individual effort. We are diverse in our educational attainments, family backgrounds, circumstances, beliefs, and economic condition. We are not faceless members of a monolithic racial category to be demeaned. Fifth, in the June 6 letter that inspired the resolution's language, the authors insist that our kids must be exposed to people unlike them and must receive social justice training. Otherwise, they charge we will gravely disserve them and leave them unprepared for the global workforce. I say poppycock to that. My children went to school here while I attended tough, multiracial, multi-ethnic Southside Chicago schools. In spite of this supposedly crippling gap in our educational experiences, both my children and I have successfully navigated and embraced a diverse outside world with ease. My son married a young woman of Mexican heritage, and my daughter is marrying a young man who is Black. How is this possible if my kids were subjected to such blinding educational deficiencies by Mahomet-Seymour schools? Easy. We taught our kids the simple yet surpassingly powerful concepts of respecting all people and living by the golden rule. That's it. No need for time-consuming, costly, and racist diversity training, social justice engineering, or ideological grooming. In closing, I strongly recommend that you pause, let the heat of the moment pass, and then do a more measured assessment of what's needed, including passing nothing at all. That actually works because state law already requires that we provide anti-bias and cultural competency training. However, if the board feels it must pass a race resolution, it could simply and strongly reaffirm our commitment to executing current law. This might unify the community rather than divide it with unnecessarily controversial and dogmatic propositions. And as a principle in setting lawful policy, I would respectfully ask that you be minimally intrusive on the work and time of teachers and on the role of families. Please trust that in 2020, our excellent staff already know how to deal with whatever isolated incidents of prejudice occur. Please trust that our wonderful parents already know how to morally guide their children in the treatment of others. Good time again. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that.
Okay, then we have some written comments, I believe, right?
Yes.
Okay. You want to read out time?
I think they're all under the 5 minutes. On July, this is from Danny Teets. On July 20th, the district adjusted the 2020-21 calendar because November 3rd has to be taken off so people can vote. The district had to find another day for students to be in school. The district chose Indigenous Peoples Day, formerly Columbus Day, to have school. I'm hoping that the district will approach school on Indigenous Peoples Day the same way they approach Veterans Day. Being in school on Veterans Day is so important to our district because our students get to see and listen to veterans. They hear stories of sacrifice, valor, pain, and triumph. They learn about what a veteran is and why they are important in our society. As a child, I learned about American history. I learned that it began when Columbus sailed the ocean blue, and that it means that a Declaration of Independence was fought for and developed, and that there were people along the way who fought against our blossoming way of life. I learned that sometimes those people were from England, and other times those people who lived here before we arrived. The natives I grew up to know were savages who scalped their settlers and moved west and wanted to take progress and freedom away from us. Did you know that in Illinois there is a road called the Indian Boundary Line Road? I happened upon this summer when I was taking rural roads from Clinton into Mahomet. I looked it up and it's exactly what it sounds like. It's a line that the natives were not allowed to cross east as settlers moved west. Those lines kept being pushed back and back and back. A few years ago, I was in South Dakota. I met a 27-year-old man from Lakota tribe who told me about the land of his ancestors. In the most desolate part of the country, his people were told they had 60 days to move from the land so that the bombs could be tested there during World War II. When testing was over, the tribe moved back onto that land. The man I met is just relearning his native language because his son is in elementary school where they are only speaking the native language. After being slapped at school for speaking her native language, his grandmother taught her children to understand the language and never speak it. This led to a whole generation unable to speak or understand their own language. Learning about Native history isn't just about learning about the atrocities that settlers put them through. It's also learning about their culture and beliefs, their systems, and a way of life. Native Americans aren't rebels that we were taught. We are taking away their land, their language, their entire way of life. We need to remember that they are a peaceful people. Chief Crazy Horse said to Sitting Bull, "The Red Nation shall rise again, and it shall be a blessing for a sick world, a world filled with broken promises, selfishness, separations, a world longing for light again. I see a time of 7 generations when all the colors of mankind will gather under the sacred tree of life, and the whole earth will become one circle again. In that day, there will be those among the Lakota who will carry knowledge and understanding of unity among all living things. The young white ones will come to those among people and ask for this wisdom. I salute the light within your eyes, and the whole universe dwells. For when you are at the center within you, and I am at that place within me, we shall be one. I do not believe that the Native American culture shall be a one-day thing that we should check off our list. I do not believe that American history or Asian history or LGBTQIA+ history shall be a one-time discussion either. These people are Americans and should be integrated into our curriculum all year at each grade level. With that said, I do believe that setting aside a day where Native Americans can come and speak to the students, where students can learn about Native systems and beliefs, where they can get to see them for the beautiful people they are, not what it is that we have made them out to be, is important. I do think too that helping our, I do think too that helping our older students see the discrepancies in how Natives are currently treated is so important. Outside of the current pandemic, the Native American unemployment rate is around 11 to 12%, nearly 3 times the national averages. Since 2001, 19% of Natives have served in the military compared to 14% of all other ethnicities. When I asked about this in South Dakota, I was told that many times it's a child's only way out of poverty. Just this summer, I spoke to a Native American in the Upper Peninsula, and she said that her tribe is always the last for public services and that they have the dirtiest water in the area. Native Americans are our country's forgotten people. We often hear that we are all immigrants, but we aren't. People were living here, living on and with this land far before we arrived. It's important that our children are reminded of that and get to know the Native Americans, what a blessing they are. I believe that a concerted effort on Indigenous People Day will leave a lasting impression on our children and hopefully on our society in the future.
Okay.
All right. This next one is from Gary Matthews, Captain U.S. Navy retired. Dear Superintendent Hall, I would like to thank you for the rational and effective manner in which you are addressing the Mahomet-Seymour alumni petition and proposed anti-racism resolution, and I would like to add a few thoughts of my own to this issue during the time allowed for public comment. To the signers of the Mahomet-Seymour petition, first, I'd like to commend you for caring and for your willingness to address the issue of racism in our society. I agree that racism does exist within our society and our community, and I share your desire to eliminate it. However, I believe you are attacking the wrong organization and people when you imply that current Mahomet-Seymour teachers and staff aren't doing enough to teach anti-racism. I acknowledge that I do not have first-hand knowledge of what may go on in MS classrooms and extracurricular activities, but I have enjoyed a close relationship with our local schools during the past 26 years through involvement with the Mahomet Area Youth Club and its predecessor organization, the Mahomet Area Boys and Girls Club, that my wife and I helped found in 1994. Throughout these years, I have been continually impressed and gratified by the quality and dedication of the teachers and staff in our local schools. The same teachers who taught and nurtured you during your own school years. I find it hard to imagine that the present staff isn't already supporting anti-racism and doubt very much that they would need to be specially trained in order to explicitly teach what amounts to the golden rule. In other words, I believe you're trying to fix something that isn't broken. As an alternative to focusing on the school system, I would suggest that you redirect your compassion and energies to address the more serious problems that support racism in our society, such as poverty, income inequality, and lack of employment opportunities. You might also volunteer to get involved in the various youth programs offered by our local churches, Mahomet Recreation, and Macy, where you can have a positive influence on the attitudes of current students by the way of peer mentoring. Again, that's Gary Matthews, Captain U.S. Navy retired.
Thank you, Gary.
You ready?
Is that it?
No, I have 2 more.
2 more, I thought you did.
Okay. Good evening. I'm writing for some clarification on what the protocol is for when a teacher, student, or staff member comes in contact with a person who has COVID. What measures are to take place before the student and teachers come back to the room or environment that person was in? I ask this in regards to the situation that occurred over this weekend and this morning with the teacher in Jumpstart program that was in contact with someone who ended up having COVID. I was told the normal cleaning was taking place, but no extra was happening. This was a classroom, is one of the compass rooms where students' immune systems are lower. I understand that the teacher tested negative on Saturday, however, that is very soon after being exposed and could still be positive. My main concern is these teachers have to work one-on-one with our children and touch the same surfaces they do on a regular basis. How often are the teachers or students being tested for COVID? Will there be any mandated testing? For this school year, my son will be doing online, except for in-person therapy he has to do for his vision. He can't learn how to walk with a cane or learn Braille online. I want to be reassured when I send him to this environment, all measures will be taken. I also want to be assured that my son will have a mask and shield on the whole time. I was unaware that the class would be eating during Jumpstart. I realize this is a life skills class, but I thought they were working on one-on-one items for their IEP that didn't get addressed well during online. I found this out through a picture posted on Facebook that clearly my son was not wearing a mask in. If you could address and explain what the actual protocol will be for these situations going forward, I would appreciate it. Thank you, Linda Hodges.
Thank you, Linda.
All right, and the last one. Good evening. I just want to express my concern regarding the situation in the Compass Atlas Jumpstart classroom. I wasn't expecting there to be an issue during week 1 of Jumpstart, so it did catch me off guard. My thought process in choosing to participate in Jumpstart and choose in-person learning for my son was there would be less risk for the students, staff in the Atlas program because there are less than a handful of students. I'm not upset that there has been a possible exposure because in everything we do now, there is a certain degree of risk involved. It's not really a matter of if so much as when it happens, because with reopening, we all know it will happen. I'm upset that no extra disinfection took place in the classroom halls or restrooms. I understand that the staff member tested negative, but it is still early in the exposure and they will likely need to test again. It is also my understanding that the person is following CUP HD guidelines and district guidelines and will not return to the classroom during Jumpstart. However, since the person must be treated like they could have COVID-19 and must quarantine, then I would expect the district to treat the facility as if someone has tested positive since they are aware of a possible exposure. The lack of taking extra precautions in cleaning and disinfecting the classroom, hall, and restroom use is unacceptable. Our children are more vulnerable and every precaution should be taken to try to mitigate exposure. Staff also must work more closely and sometimes one-on-one with our children. They should be protected as much as possible. I understand that you cannot stop situations from arising. You can, however, control the responses and mitigate further exposure once it's known. This is not the district's first experience with exposure, so I would have thought there were already written protocols stating the measures that need to be taken when situations arise. I appreciate all the thought and work that went into developing the district's COVID-19 return to school health plan for family policy. I strongly urge the district to develop and share written protocols for when positive exposures, known exposures, and positive cases are known to include facilities are disinfected and cleaned beyond the daily routine COVID-19 cleanings. Thank you for listening. Sincerely, Kim Wilkridge.
Thank you again. Thank you everybody that participated in the comment portion tonight.
Does the board have an opportunity to comment?
You can.
You gonna give me a time limit?
Sure. Go. Sure.
All right. This board is faced with an important decision this evening. It's been presented with an anti-racism resolution. It seems that this would be an easy choice. I think all of us would agree that racism is evil and that all individuals have inherent value regardless of their external characteristics. What complicates this matter is an identity crisis. Too many people believe their identity is rooted in these external characteristics: success in school, success in music or sports, one's image on social media, social status, one's occupation, money, or power, and I could go on with many more things. None of these things provide any inherent value to an individual. My message to any students who are listening tonight: you are so much more valuable than any of these temporary things. You are a uniquely gifted and talented individual created by God. This is your identity. Ultimately, this is what gives value to your life, and no one can take that away. Our Declaration of Independence succinctly describes the inherent value of an individual. It reads, "We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness." What makes these truths self-evident? What is the basis for equality? Where do these values come from? Are they solely the product of man's intellect or social or cultural evolution? Our founding fathers had it right. These truths are self-evident because they are endowed by our Creator. America is more than a nation, it is an ideal. It is this ideal that has given freedom to many, not only in America, but across the globe. This has been an imperfect process, but the progress of freedom cannot be denied. I believe that America at its core is good when it espouses to follow its founding principles. You might be asking, what does this have to do with an anti-racism resolution? The resolution that is being recommended to the board tonight has very little positive to say about America, its people, and especially the people of this school district and community. It uses terms such as implicit bias, systemic racism, power, and privilege. The premise of this resolution is that we all have an illness of which we are completely unaware, while it invades every aspect of our lives. This includes our institutions, our words, our actions, and even our private thoughts. It's an illness that's seen in every conversation and wayward glance, no matter what your intentions may be. In fact, your intentions have no standing. What matters is the perception of someone who has predetermined your intent based on the group or class you are identified with. The only remedy is to admit to this illness and consent to re-education. This re-education is presented by those who apparently do not possess the illness. They hold the truth, and you may choose to freely submit to their prescribed remedy or be bludgeoned and humiliated until you conform. I would prefer to proceed in a more positive direction, using terms such as humility, grace, forgiveness, and love. We are humbled and need forgiveness because we have all fallen short. As a result, we are all in need of grace. This grace has been extended to us so that we might extend it to others. In humility, we can also love unconditionally by seeking to place the needs of others before our own needs. Realizing that we have inherent value because we have been uniquely created in the image of God, why can't we all ascribe to the inclusive statement, "Love your neighbor as yourself"? Wouldn't this be a better way of celebrating our diversity and resolving our differences?
Thanks, Jeremy.
Thank you, Jeremy. Do any other board members have comment before we get into the meeting? Juan?
I do. My biggest issue is for the general public and people. I've been a school social worker for over 20 years, and I grew up in Champaign County. I only moved to Mahomet when I started working out here. So I grew up in Urbana and lived in Champaign. I've worked in various districts, and I take a lot of great pride in having run for school board for what I felt were the right reasons. And every single person, when we got on the board, we took a code of conduct, and I bring mine every time. I do this in my professional life too, but the very first thing it says is I will represent all school district constituents honestly and equally and refuse to surrender my responsibilities to special interest or partisan political groups. I'm very hurt that someone would write a document and put in it that it is an unequivocal belief of the Mahomet-Seymour Board of Ed that your system racism in American society is real. I don't want to let other people speak for me. I was elected to speak for the majority of the people, and it is hurtful to me that someone would come in and put a document together and say, you must adopt it, and this is what you need to do. We have anti-bullying policies in our school that we have for our kids, and we want those to be executed. And I am more than happy, and I appreciate the framework, and I want people to be treated fairly. I want everyone to be treated fairly. I brought character counts to this district in 1997, which is a national curriculum, and isn't anything that starts with being kind and caring and respectful. And we've gotten away from that probably because we have so many other things that we need to cover. But I think that getting together and having dialogue with community members and staff and people that teach these is important, rather than having a special interest group come in and tell us what to do. Is there a risk in me saying that? There is, but there's a risk in being on a public board. Being a school board member should be the last democratic thing that there is in the world, and it's not what it is now. That's all I have. And I made the time limit, right? Wow.
Any other board members with anything, comments up front? Obviously, we're going to get into several of these items. Megan, Tanner, Colleen, anybody? Okay. We're now into the regular agenda for the evening, and we've got several items ahead of us. First is an extracurricular update with Mr. Hensley and Mr. Fisher. The ever-changing landscape.
You better get it quick before it changes.
As Mr. Hensley can attest, it's been an interesting summer to be an athletic director in the state of Illinois. In particular, the last 10 days for our coaches, our students, and our parents have been really trying. 10 days ago, the IESA, the Junior High Association, came out and said, we're not going to have any fall sports. And then they kind of didn't make any comments on anything past what was going to be in the fall. 3 days ago, 2 days after the IHSA made their decision, they came out and said, we're going to have some modified fall sports. So the things that we would normally participate in the fall are going to take place, but on a much smaller scale. And there is not going to be any sort of state series past a regional for baseball and softball or a sectional for cross country. So before I go any further, we have extremely dedicated coaches. I mean, I've been in contact with them as Mr. Hensley has been with his coaches, and they have been with us every step of the way and not giving up hope, no matter how dire it was on the 24th. And so I want to commend all of our coaches, but especially our fall sport coaches who have been on this roller coaster of we have a season, we don't have a season, now we have a season. Coach Martin, Coach Heinlein, and Coach Major have been wonderful to work with in getting stuff prepared. I met with all of them Thursday before we knew it was going to be reinstated. Met with them all again today to kind of outline what our plans were going to be for getting started again. This afternoon, I sent you the IESA plan. I'm not going to go through all of it. Just the real big pieces of this is that basically there's this gap in October, mid-October, to when we come back from school and after winter break in January, to where they've kind of given us this window of time, I guess, just to kind of recover. And then once we come back in January, we're going to hit it really hard, hopefully. And we have volleyball, boys basketball, and wrestling, whatever shape or form that will take place. And then after that, girls basketball has moved from the fall to the spring, which is a really big shift. And then that kind of directly coincides with track and field, which is a bummer that are extremely gifted and talented athletic kids will have to choose between one or the other. And talking with all the coaches today, I also went through with them what our responsibilities were going to be with the all sports policy that was announced last Wednesday. It's going to be different. We're not going to be utilizing the dugouts. Our kids will have their stuff spaced out along the fence line 6 feet apart. Cross-country meets are going to be drastically different. We're not going to be able to have our 13-team invite. We're going to be looking at triangulars with a limited amount of kids. So it's going to be different. I'm very pleased and happy that they have the opportunity to at least compete in something. As it says in here a couple times, the ISA stated that the governor places everybody on remote learning, then they are going to cancel or suspend whatever activity that they're currently in. So at this point in time, I would entertain any questions that the board members might have about junior high athletics.
Questions for everybody?
When you say suspend, does that include practices and unofficial practices?
I would say when they say we're suspending everything, that means we're suspending everything. So if tomorrow the governor said, you know, we're going back to remote learning, then obviously we wouldn't be able to start anything in person.
Can
So
you
I will
say what?
One of the things that they came out with Friday was that today we could have started everything. And talking with Mr. Mills and talking with Mr. Hensley and Dr. Hall, we kind of felt like the best course of action would be to put a plan together rather than dive in at first and try to react. So we're trying to be proactive, and our stuff is not going to start until this weekend or next Monday for cross country. So we're trying to be proactive instead of reactive in that regard.
I appreciate that.
Good.
And thanks for letting us know how the people are adapting to the changes.
Thank
Hang on, you're right. Yeah. You all thought you had a physical schedule for what you thought were all the home events, right?
Well, and that's the crazy part of this whole thing is that we could schedule this, and they always really recommend that we have 2 officials. There might be times where, guess what, we might only have 1, and it might just have to work. Thank you.
Thank you. Matt?
So not entirely different with the high school. I do appreciate the time that Doug has put in. We spent a lot of time on the phone, a lot of time meeting in person, trying to figure out where the high school and junior high programs intersect, or maybe those intersections aren't occurring. Just a couple of different layers. The IHSA has went to a 4-season model where we're going to thankfully start our fall sports with cross country, golf, tennis, and girls swim. We can start as early as next week. I anticipate that for boys and girls cross country, we will be ready to go on Monday, and boys and girls golf, I'm sorry. Tennis and swim obviously have some external dynamics because we use other folks' facilities. And so we're working with those agencies to get those plans put in place as well, in the hopes that we can start as early as the 10th. But certainly if we can't make that happen, we'll start shortly thereafter. So just a few other talking points. One thing that we did find out, we've been having weekly calls between the Illinois Athletic Directors Association and the IHSA. Those have been very, very helpful. It really gives an appreciation for the struggle that those folks are having with these decisions as well, because they're, much like the athletic directors, folks in the IHSA office are committed to providing students opportunities to participate. So we are expecting sport-specific guidelines by this Friday. And so there will be a set of rules that will overlay the return to activities 1.0 that the IHSA has already issued based upon the guidelines that the governor established. So we'll have those sport-specific guidelines that they'll, as Mr. Fisher addressed, talking about how you run a cross-country meet, how you run a tennis match. For example, we just learned today that for girls swimming, you can only have 1 kid in a lane at a time. So some additional stressors on some facilities there when you're talking about maybe having a swim team with 20 plus kids on it. So we anticipate that by Friday. I'm meeting with all the head coaches. Those started last week and are continuing through this week so that we can talk about what scheduling may look like, what the challenges that we may face coming up. Could be want to get their set of lenses on things so that we can kind of look not only globally, but kind of at the micro level in terms of the individual sports. We have an Apollo conference meeting tomorrow, so that's another layer we have at the high school level in terms of what that scheduling piece is going to look like. That can be both a positive and a negative. Will we continue to play everybody twice in basketball and volleyball? We've got now this 1 week out there in football. What does that look like? We'll be addressing a lot of those concerns tomorrow. We have the fall sports. I mentioned those, and we'll have a little window as well. That window will be about 3 weeks from the end of October till mid-November, which is kind of the traditional start date for winter sports. And we'll pick up basketball, wrestling, boys swim and dive, and cheer and dance at that point in time. Those will run through February. And then in the spring, we'll pick up football, soccer, girls volleyball, girls volleyball, girls. And then we'll go to our summer schedule, which baseball, softball, track and field, and girls soccer will be part of. Honestly, one of the biggest challenges that we face is facility-related challenge. It wouldn't take too many nights of bad weather to make your football field look really not too pretty. And then a bigger challenge is if we start boys soccer and play starting March 1st, we're going to play through the late spring, early spring, late spring, and then the girls come onto the field after that. So we're going to could have some tough weather-related decisions, but we'll cross those bridges when we get to it. Overall, I think, as Mr. Fisher alluded to, our coaches are excited about the opportunity. Our kids are excited about the opportunity. We hope that it continues to pay dividends, and that the decisions we're making every day will give our kids the opportunity to participate. I shared this document in advance. Be happy to entertain any questions that the board might have as it relates to this proposal.
Questions for Mr. Hensley?
I have one question about sports. Are we still providing uniforms for students?
Yes.
And does the district cover the cost of the uniforms?
Between the district budget, the athletic boosters, and occasionally some team activity funds, we cover the costs of uniforms. Now, for example, if an individual is buying a warm-up or buying some team gear, that might be something that is a responsibility of the family.
And so is a warm-up or team gear required in order to participate in the sport?
No, it wouldn't be required. And if we have students and families who have difficulties with some of those costs, we have the resources in place to help make sure that those kids have the same thing that everybody else has.
So there's no student who's told they have to buy a uniform piece or a warm-up piece or a team gear piece outside of what the district provides?
I mean, there are certainly some pieces of uniform that are personal pieces. So for example, a girl's swimsuit would be something that would be an individual purchase. There could be some under apparel that would certainly be required. So there could be times where students are purchasing items, but those are personal items. So we don't give back the golf shirts. If somebody buys a golf shirt, they would keep that. Socks would be another example. I mentioned swim uniforms would be another example. We do provide caps and just let the kids keep those, swim caps, for example. Baseball caps would be something that the individual students or families buy because those aren't returned.
Okay, I just wanted to check because I've been hearing in the community that there are students who are required to buy, say, like a warm-up uniform or something that's really expensive. And I know we had this discussion before when we talked about the uniform contract, and this, we discussed it then, but I've been hearing things about it in the community since then. And so I just wanted to follow up while you guys were here to talk about sports. Thank you.
Sure.
I feel like if I can comment, there's always an opportunity to buy more apparel if you want to buy it at any time. I mean, the school says, hey, if you want this, you can get it. That's totally up to you.
I guess what I don't want is for us to
Right.
basically keep certain kids out of our sports activities by requiring a fee to participate in sports over and above the standard fee. And so we're essentially discriminating against students without the financial resources to be able to participate in our sports. And there are some people in the community who seem to believe that that is the case. And so I'm just trying to clarify whether we ever ask parents to pay money for something that we say is required for a child to participate in a sport.
I mean, my experience when I order stuff for my kid, like for soccer, it's all optional, whether you want that. The school provides the jersey and the shorts. We do buy our own swimsuit. Sometimes the district helps with that, but I think that's a gross thing to share. Those are the only two I can comment on.
Any other questions for Mr. Hensley?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yep.
Matt, can you say, and this is a question for junior high too, if a sport is being pushed back to January, let's say, will they be having training sessions or practices or anything like that at this time, or are they going to wait until January to start those?
So that's actually a good question that I failed to address. The IHSA at the high school level has established another contact day period that will begin September 7th, and it will run through October 31st. And any sport that is not in season, so take out the sports we have in this fall, will be eligible to have up to 20 contact days between September 7th and October 31st.
As far as the junior high goes, all of those sports that are starting in January are in the medium risk category right now. So we're kind of limited in what we can and can't do. So for example, if Coach Langford came in and said, hey, I want to have some 5-on-5, we can't do that. Because that is prohibited on the guidelines that came out last Wednesday. And I honestly don't know when those will change. They could change tomorrow and then change again next week. So I would say that would probably be a case-by-case basis. Honestly, as far as wrestling goes, I don't know what we will do there because it's kind of hard to do anything with wrestling without physically maneuvering with another person. So, I mean, they do usually do a little bit of a week or two before the season starts of conditioning, but again, that'll be a case-by-case basis as we get closer to January.
Will athletes and coaches be required to test regularly?
We do not have we do not have a plan in place for that at this point.
Can you say what our current mask rules are? When do they need to have masks on?
Following established guidelines, so unless you're involved in strenuous activity, you're required to have on masks. If you are outside and you can socially distance, you're not required to required to mask. And the IHSA put out last week that if you're in a pool swimming, you're not required to wear a mask either.
That's good, then you really are. That's someone who got swim lessons all summer.
Okay, that's all my questions. Thank you very much, both of you, for the hard work. I know you guys are dealing with a really ever-changing situation.
Thank you. Thank you.
Other comments or questions for our athletic directors? Gentlemen, thank you for being here tonight. We appreciate the update and we appreciate everything you're going through to try to help something good happen for students this year.
Thank you. Thank you.
Item number 7, budget overview. Heather.
Hello.
Welcome.
How are you, Dr. Hall? We had a meeting, and we meaning Mr. Giles, Mr. Keith, Dr. Hall, and myself on July 29th to kind of go over the preliminary budget. And I do want to stress preliminary budget. The reason is that we want to make this the most up-to-date display of what we think is going to happen this year. That way we have good targets when we're looking at POs and we know what our goals are. You know, I will be making changes probably, I mean, if there are any changes up to the date that the Board of Education approves it, I will let you know what those changes are. For example, just last week before the Finance Committee meeting, found out there's going to be about $500,000 more in residential placements. So that type of thing, obviously needs to be put into the budget. Right now, I just was going to go over, and if I would try to go quickly so I don't bore all of you completely, but if you have any questions, please let me know. Some of the assumptions that I've made going through the budget. Property taxes, just because sometimes we don't have the full, we don't get the full collection rate. 98.5% has always been a good target in the past. Interest is based off the current interest rates. I have looked on ISB website every week. Right now, they are just looking at flat funding. That means no tier money, but we'd be getting the same money as that we had received last year, which obviously that's probably what everybody is getting. The court replacement taxes, I assumed a small decrease, 4% decrease. Tips, same as last year. Transportation, I'm going to be doing in the next 2 weeks after I get some information so that I can do the transportation claim and I'll get more accurate numbers. So right now I just have it as flat. It's kind of the theme of the year. Sales tax, I estimated a decrease, basically 5% under what we actually received this last year, 9% under what we actually budgeted. We have the ESSER money. With this ESSER money, we allocated additional Chromebooks and tablets to K through 1, and that way that the ones that were turned in could be given to grade 2. But then we also absorb the cost of the new Chromebooks that we do on a yearly basis for replacements, as well as some small stipends for people attending the reopening task force. So that is included both revenue and expenses. Of course, as they have been budgeted with ISB, with Dr. Rummel, and special ed, Christine, title and special education, they are budgeted exactly like they were with ISB. And that is one thing you're going to do a little bit different this year is continue to keep, you might see something called budget transfers in the consent agenda. And this is only because I like to keep the budget in the system consistent with what's in ISB. Why? Because then when Dr. Rummel is looking at her expenses and she's approving things, she has the right number in there so that she'll know what her budget is and how much money she has left. So it's a zero effect. It's just basically if somebody decides they need more supplies and purchase services, it just goes from one to the other. So the overall amount would only change if she was allocated more money from the state. But then they would increase basically the same. The revenue would equal the expenditures. For the bonds and leases, there had been some confusion in the past because there are several different types of debt. So I broke them out between 4 different categories. Capital leases will be in Fund 30, which capital leases are just things that they basically make us put through the bond and interest fund. They are leases like computer leases or our copiers and printers. 31 is levy debt. That's what we actually levy for. So the bond and interest that we levy for. 32 will be debt certificates. That is paid out of sales tax revenue. And then there's the alternative revenue bonds that are also paid out of sales tax revenue. The difference is that we actually have to abate the bonds for alternative revenue bonds. Permanent transfers. As you probably had seen, at the end of June, we had a negative balance in O&M. You will also see in my budget right now, there's a negative balance in O&M at the end. I'm hoping that will not, I know it will not stay negative because Steve and I, Mr. Curtis, we are going to go through and just kind of go through his budget line by line and see if there's anything else we can take out. I've already got some ideas. And if not, I will increase the permanent transfer to O&M to make that at least flat so we can start out the new year flat. And then also to transportation for $75,000. I do want to note in this budget that we have not included the $400,000 grant that we could and should be getting. So I don't want to count on anything until we actually get it when it's revenue.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Have we heard anything more about that?
I have continued to ask for updates.
Okay. I have an update. I inquired with Sean Weiger, and he had an upcoming meeting with Chapin who's going to get back to us. So he was going to inquire.
All right.
Nice to have.
Of course, the salaries basically are just on the negotiated salary schedule. And anybody that's coming in and we don't know where they're going to put, they were estimated at mid-range. Insurance based off of the renewals was increased by 3%. And I'm trying to keep purchase services and supplies as flat as possible this year. There are some one-time things that we know about, like for example, nursing supplies. We're probably going to need more of those. So, we're going to increase those. But if we know about it, then put it in the budget, but if, nothing else is known, then keeping it flat is the main goal. We did have some one-time expenditures last year that I took out, like for HVAC and for underground tank that we had taken out at the bus farm. And we put a new tank on, so things like that, just making sure that we didn't have, that money in there again this year, but then also including anything that we might know about. Chromebooks, again, like I said, we took that out of our operating budget for this year and absorbed it into the ESSER grant. So that helped us quite a bit. We did move for food service back to where we were last year in the budget. And this is something also, that we'll be ongoing to talking to them about what kind of expenses we'll see in this next year with the circumstances that we have, how, because they have said, some things may cost more, some things may cost less, so just making sure that we're on target with that as well.
What would cost more?
We're thinking staffing, or I don't know. Basically what it was said in the last meeting was that our rate, and this is something I'm following up with her on, our rate per meal was based on the volume. And to cover basically the fixed costs that they have, our rate would have been more for less meals. So that's just something we need to continue to discuss with them. So yes, like I said, we have put in additional PPE. We purchased some tents, but Dr. Hall has been doing her magic and has sold some of those tents. So some of that may
And some donations.
be a non-issue. So yes, but it is in there at the time. We had an
We sold them
increase.
after we used them.
Yes. Yeah, no, we're not on damage. Yes. Our IMRF rate changed. Basically, that is just something that naturally changes from year to year based off of investments and retirees. It went up 3%. Of course, I know everybody was probably really alarmed when they first looked at this because this is negative 999,000. What you need to recall is that we received $965,000 in bond money last year from our death certificates.
Right.
Well, we didn't spend it last year. We're spending it this year. So, basically think of it as our beginning balance is boosted up and we're spending it down. And it's for all the projects that have been approved by the board. In the capital projects funds, you'll find the field house and the high school office, most of the high school office. Some of the items can actually be broken down to help life safety. Increase the tort fund due to the Lincoln Trail stairs, the entry and the high school entry, and increase the fire and safety due to the field house air intake, high school main common floor, dust collection, paint booth, and high school roof. So that's where you see the big dollars coming out, especially if you look at my summary and under site and construction, it's $885,000, which is the rest of those funds. So does anybody have any questions or concerns? Or I did have some, I know you probably got swarmed with my emails today. I had some requests during the finance committee meeting just to kind of look at sales tax to see if we need to lower the revenue assumption a little bit. Based off of the fact of what, how much we plan to get, what are the items that, when are our peaks, when are our valleys, and what do we expect to get in this next year with any kind of decrease. I will say the internet sales they've already started. So say Dr. Hall orders something from Mahomet, that will go towards our sales tax.
Yeah.
And then Mr. Keith also asked me to give him a breakdown by account number of all of the items. So I will send that out as soon as I get that completed.
So I know with sales tax, we're thinking it's going to drop a little bit just because of the economic climate in the county and people aren't out spending as much money. But now that we're getting money off the internet sales,
Yes.
do you think that's going to balance most of it, all of it, more of it?
I don't know. Currently, as to date, we're down 1.4%. So it just, right now, I think we're doing as well as we can do, but, you know, I can't foresee, I mean, I know my household likes the internet, so, but,
Heather, did you, I'm sorry, say purchases off the internet, you did say that the purchase is if it originates in this zip code or the purchase is made from a company that resides in this zip code?
if it's actually purchased from someone in this zip code. Like
So
in
that's
the
a business, a business in Champaign County that is purchased over the internet.
You know, it's the way that they explained it to me today was if the person, wherever it originates. So if we order something from Los Angeles, we would get the sales tax in Champaign County if it was ordered from Champaign.
On all goods and services, or is there specific goods and services that covers?
It's the same goods and services that are regulated, that we receive it off of in Champaign County itself. Because there's certain items we don't get, you know, sales tax off of.
Groceries, that kind of thing, yes.
And
You said you increased. So what you're sending out per Ken's request is the line item detail for all of the budget, is that correct?
Yes, and as I told him, it will be difficult to decipher because you're going to have to understand function codes, object codes, you know, the source codes and the, it's not going to be easy to know what's in it or out. Like, say something goes down, like say an educational salary went down in elementary. Well, it could have gone up in middle school because they might have transferred that person from elementary to middle school. Does that make sense? So it's going to be hard to decipher line by line, but I'm more than happy to send it out.
So we don't keep line by line. So for example, we won't see a PPE line item that shows what we budgeted for PPE and what we are increased for cleaning supplies.
Health services supplies, and then so that would start off with a certain code 2222. So you have different codes that will tell you what that is.
Can you send the code key as well, please?
What I can do is I'll attach the Illinois Accounting Program Manual because it's pretty large. I mean, if you want to look to see what different things are. I mean, I can explain the basic like function code, object code, you know, source, what they are, but then if you want to look at actual numbers, you can refer to that if you want to see what something is.
So that would serve as a directory.
Yeah, it would serve as a directory. It has the code and then it tells you. And usually it's within a 10 digit, for example, like what I did with Fund 30, like 30 through 39 is the debt service, you know, so it goes from usually a 10 digit grouping.
Do we account for every employee individually, or are we lumping them together?
No, that would be lumped by their location and by what they are, like elementaries all together. And I mean, we don't, yeah, we put them in, yeah.
We don't break down specific salaries by employee in this district?
I do that when I do the budget, but not when I mean, it's not, basically what I do is I figure out where they've been before and then I put them with their new salary and the new thing. But no, like if you look at the actual AFR or the budget, it's all broken down by account number and everything is summed together.
I would like to see the line item detail of that budget, please.
I did that manually. There's nothing I can actually like pull that because of the request to have the budget so early. I went in and had to manually do that person by person. So what he's wanting is previous year to current year. I mean, I'll give you this, and then if you have any direct questions about any certain lines, I can help you.
Okay.
Good. Other questions for Heather?
I just want to thank Heather and her team putting this all together. I really appreciate the ability to split out the bonds in that way. I think we've had confusion over debt ratios for a few years. I also appreciate the approach that you used and the conservatism and so forth here to try to figure this out. Yeah, in a year that's going to be pretty fluid.
That's why I just want, if anybody does have any questions or concerns, I mean, please just contact me, because that's what the whole purpose of the being on display is for, so that I can continue to make changes to make it as realistic as possible.
Heather, is there anything you wanted to touch on the timeline, or you just provide?
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. I'm just sorry about that. Okay. Obviously, today's the study session with the preliminary budget. August 14th is when it'll go on display for 30 days. By school code, we have to have it on display for 30 days. We'll have it on display in the office, and I can even display it on the website as well. And then we will have the study session budget hearing as requested on September 14th before it is approved on September 21st, which we have to have it approved before the end of September to be in good standing.
Other questions for Heather?
This is Ken. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I just wanted to quickly mention to the other board members that Heather has been just wonderful to work with. I really appreciate all the details she's providing and the questions she's answering. She's really doing a great job for us, and I really appreciate that a lot.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it.
More early detail than we are used to, so thank you.
Thank you. They wanted the finances to be like the pandemic. They wanted to change and jump.
All right, next up is the anti-racism resolution. I've been asked that we take just a brief comfort break before we get into that one. So we'll go ahead and do a 5-minute recess and then come back. Jared, you want to do your magic? All right, everybody, thank you. We are back from our little break. And it's good to have everyone back with us. And we're to item number 8, anti-racism resolution presented by Dr. Hall.
So this was brought to the board for discussion on June 22nd, and the decision is to bring it back to this evening for more discussion and possible approval. I did make a few edits to the document in terms of reporting and strategic planning. I appreciate the comments that have been made tonight. Understand that they are very heartfelt, genuine, kind comments that are all aimed at the right purpose here. So if this is not the document that the board chooses to pass, I don't know how all board members feel about it. I do think it is important that in some way this board makes a statement about racism or anti-racism activities. So if this isn't it, I would encourage this to continue to be explored. The population has become more diverse in Mahomet-Seymour schools. I worked here for 11 years at a time when our community and our school population was not very diverse, almost all white. And while we still are a white majority school district, we do have more and more different types of diversity in our school district. That includes different faiths, people of color, people of the LGBTQIA+ community. And it's important that the board from the top down creates a statement about inclusion, diversity, and equity. So the conversation maybe needs to continue after tonight, but I genuinely appreciate what has been said by everybody this evening. And so I'll leave it at that. Those are my thoughts.
Okay, board members, comments on the resolution? Well, I guess first of all, the superintendent has moved, we approved that. Is there a motion to do that? Before we have discussion. Is there a motion to accept or approve the resolution? Not hearing a motion, I'll open it up to discussion anyway, I guess. Is there anything they want to say?
Yeah, I would move that the Board of Education and includes parents, teachers, and board members, and will focus on actionable tasks and a more inclusive and accepting culture in Mahomet-Seymour. And I would like this board to, this committee would report to the board at each board meeting and would start its work sometime in August, and I would be willing to head up that committee.
I second the motion.
Megan, can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Can you say what you said again? I did, you kind of broke up a little bit, but I just want to make sure that I heard the order of people that were calling to be involved. Thank you so much.
Sure. I move that the Board of Education create an inclusion and social justice committee that will include parents, teachers, and board members to focus on actionable tasks to promote a more inclusive and accepting culture in Mahomet-Seymour School District.
Okay, so that's what's on the table, and that has been seconded.
Can you send that to Dawn, please?
I sure can.
Thank you.
I'll do that after the meeting if that's okay.
I'm assuming you got Dawn's email.
No.
No,
Dawn's gonna be
send
in
it.
minutes.
I got you. I see what we're doing. Okay.
Sorry. I'm just here for roll call vote.
Okay. I think the committee and dialogue is a far better approach than a one-time edict of some sort. I think what we've got to have is behavior and not just a statement.
I think it's important that our staff have something in that, and that it does come to the board. I feel much more comfortable talking about something as a community engagement with board and the staff than having something be directed to us.
I guess one of my thoughts is Dr. Hall and Dr. Rummel have been laying kind of the foundation here for a couple of years now and trying to do something with our staff to get better at equity, diversity, and anti-racism kind of stuff. And, that plan has been put together so far, includes consulting with some experts at U of I, it includes extensive staff development, it includes curriculum review. And it's really not meant to be a Band-Aid, but it's kind of meant to be an ongoing developing program. It's not a one and done thing, but it's something that's really committed to impacting the culture of the district and helping us get better with equity, diversity, and anti-racism. How would this committee work with what we've got in progress?
Because I think what is nice is the things that you all have put in place to go forward, Rummel and Dr. Hall, Dr. Rummel and Dr. Hall, kind of give us an assessment of where we are and how these people can help us grow and change or make adaptations, perhaps. I mean, that's the way I would understand if you're having consultants come in and help, like,
I guess my question is this committee something that's going to help that and support that effort? Or is this committee something that's, are we starting over at scratch?
I think that this, in my mind, would be a board level committee. It would certainly work in combination what the district administration has internally for staffing. This would really provide more of a mechanism for communication and discussion with community members that would include staff, but they would be used by the board to more effectively assess and enact policy in more effective ways that then might translate down into different procedural changes. But until we get into that work, I think it's difficult to know, where that would go. But I don't think these are in conflict, and I don't believe that this is a start over. This is a different segment of focus and engagement.
I think I would like to see something written, so we might have some more details about what the committee actually will be responsible for, what it will be charged to, and what its constraints are.
I'd like to propose that that's something that is part of the first part of the committee work. I think until we sit down and have a conversation with community members and teachers and the board members ourselves, we haven't had a chance to even sit and discuss this amongst ourselves. It's hard to know what the outcomes will be. So I think part of the initial work of that committee would be to outline what we think the goals of the committee are, the effective steps that would be made by the committee, the data points that we would be collecting, and the feedback loop we would use for assessment throughout the work that the committee does.
But I think we can do that before we form a committee. I think that's what would be most important, is to come up with something that we would have some sort of guidelines or procedures and understanding of more of what we would be voting on and approving such a committee.
If I'm hearing you right, it sounds like it should be an exploratory committee before it's an official committee.
I would agree. We need to know kind of an assessment. I keep saying as needs assessment, what we have in place, what we want to see, be better and that kind of thing. And like they've given the outline of some of the type of things, but does everybody know that,
I disagree. I'm approaching this as our community members have come and asked our board for help. I would like to form a committee that is solely focused on helping them and listening to them I don't want to pre-prescribe what it is that we expect to get out of this before we actually understand what they're asking us for help on. I think what I have heard through the communication that we've received thus far, from the communication that I've had in person with people, is that people are asking us to hear them and to understand their stories. And I think until we do that, to pre-prescribe some kind of outcome limits our ability to effectively listen and be nimble enough to make a cultural change in this district.
I don't know that I want to pre-describe outcomes. I kind of like some ideas. You know, is this a 6-person committee? Is this a 60-person committee? What do we envision? I mean, not that we say it's 12 people and it's got to be exactly 12, but what are we thinking as far as structure? How many people are we thinking of involving? How are we? Where are the people we're involving coming from? Is this something you volunteer for? Is it something you're selected for? Both? You know, how does that kind of thing work?
And I would like to do it right. I look at this as a real opportunity for us to present information that has some impacts, but for us to be so naive to just kick it along. I mean, there's talk in this big document that I've read multiple times about curriculum procedures, and that's why the staff are important to be a part of it, as well as
my motion included staff.
That was just my comment.
Dr. Hall and Dr. Romo, you guys, we've done some groundwork in this area. What you have any thoughts you want to share? The motion that's on the table is not the motion we thought we were going to have on the table, so I don't know if you've got any ideas or thoughts or not.
I would just say I think it's always important to get community voice, and that's why we had set up in the spring the 3 town halls, and working now to get new dates for this spring for this fall, because I think it's important to hear people's voices. I think it's important when you're doing something like that to have facilitated by an expert, and that's why we are working with the U of I and specifically Dr. Jan Carter Black with that, to have somebody who's an expert in that area to lead that and to facilitate those discussions.
Okay.
I agree with Dr. Rummel, and I don't disagree with the idea of forming a committee, a different committee, but I do think it's important to not prescribe the outcomes of the work that committee would do, but more the parameters and the guardrails within which it'll work.
Exactly.
And I do want to say that we specifically talked in the spring and again this summer with Dr. Carter Black about the committee and forming a committee, and she felt that, and this is just her recommendation, that we wait until we have the town halls to form the committee, so that we kind of had a direction and some guidance for the work that committee would be doing. But again, that was just her input at that time.
And the town halls would be open to anybody, all those people, so that multiple voices could be heard. We wanted to have those in different locations. And so as opposed, again, that doesn't just place having a committee, but the goal of the town halls was to be more inclusive and hear from as many people as possible. Whereas I think if a committee is selected, you do have a limited number of voices. Those voices are still very important. And again, I'm not saying that those activities are mutually exclusive. I think it's just important to define the direction that we're going.
It seems like maybe what I hear people saying is that they want to hear more about how the committee will be run. It seems to me that if we would form a committee, the first task could be, if Megan was the chair of this board committee, she could come and explain at the next meeting more of the details about how she would think things would specifically run, or procedures to choose people to be on the committee, or whatever it would be. And then that committee would be a resource for the district, and this would be a board committee, right? But it would be a resource for the district to be able to run town halls or other activities they might want to do. But in order to move forward, I feel like we need to start going, right? So if we form a committee, then the board can hear from the committee, and then we can give our feedback, positive, negative. We can take recommendations, we can not take recommendations. It's a way for us as a board to discuss while the committee gathers all the data and puts forward proposals.
I would disagree. I think you need to have something planned out before you commit to forming the committee. Planned out in a sense that you do need some parameters and guardrails and how this is going to operate. I don't think you just start a committee and then make plans after you make the committee.
And you already have a plan to be executed with Dr. Garterbach. It just had a bump in the road with COVID.
So isn't that already prescribed in our policy in 2-150 when it describes how committees operate? I think those guardrails are already there.
Not specifically for a diversity committee.
Right, it sets it for every committee. It says things like it cannot take any final actions on behalf of the board, and it makes recommendations to the board. So I don't know what other guardrails you're wanting aside from what's in that policy.
So I just want to clarify that we're talking about setting up a board committee that would be subject to the Open Meetings Act. Is that the direction that's being
I heard board committee is what I heard. That's a good question.
That is correct. I said a board level creates an inclusion and social justice committee, board level committee.
And I guess I want to know, how does this improve our outcomes related to our mission and educating our students? What's this? I think that we can do a lot of things, but our primary goal is to give the finest education we can give to our students. And how does this contribute to that? And number two is, we already have trouble getting through board meetings. And are we adding more things to an already crowded agenda that we have trouble giving time to? So I just would need to know some more details before I could agree to anything.
What would be the objectives with this committee?
Focus on actionable tasks, a more inclusive and accepting culture in Mahomet-Seymour. I think until the committee meets and sets some goals for itself and gets some input from people who have come to us with ideas and asked us to make changes, to put a framework around that is hard to do.
Gotcha. So under the plan Dr. Rummel has in place right now, that's part of that plan, right?
Yes. I believe that we've been asked to take board level action. I think this is important enough that it deserves board level focus. I know that the administration has its own focus, which is also important, but those are two different funnels and two different sets of eyes, two different sets of thought processes. And I think doing both of those can really only provide us a more strengthened and robust approach to this problem.
Yeah, honestly, I like the idea of both of them to run along each other. I wouldn't be in favor of shutting Dr. Rummel's work down. But I do like the idea of a board level committee, and unless someone else is stepping up, I would say we should just let Megan run with it as the chair of the committee. I do have one quick question though, Megan. In our policy, there's a distinction between a special board committee and a standing board committee. Do you know which one you were intending?
I was suggesting a standing board committee.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify. Thank you.
Thank you for clarifying that for me. I meant to add that to my motion and I had left that.
I think it'd be fair to suggest the exploration of such a committee and have more input at the next work meeting.
I agree with that.
Okay, so it's been suggested that maybe you come back at the next board meeting with a little more detail, certainly not necessarily the operations.
I'd like to move ahead with the vote on my motion, if we could do that, please.
And I just want to encourage the board to take some sort of action in response to the pleas that we heard tonight and in previous meetings and in petitions and in emails. I think to punt again on something as simple as forming a committee, it would not be a good idea.
I will take exception to the words that we're punting anything. You know, when folks came to us a couple months ago, there was an assumption that we had nothing going on with this. And in fact, we had a lot going on with this. And
It's our first discussion on it also.
and this is also the first time we've been able to discuss it. And I'm not ready, in my mind, just to walk away from what I think is a pretty good plan that hits on, that addresses what needs to be addressed. So, I mean, that's kind of where I'm at. If you want me to vote up another committee tonight, I'm probably not going to vote to do that. If you want to come back to me with a little more idea, with some more thoughts on how a structure for this would work, and the number of people that would be involved, and those kinds of things, so we can make a little better decision about it, I'd entertain that.
We'll also say that even though we're in summer and we don't have our staff to be able to work with them and continue some of the work we started in the fall, we did add under our staff learning opportunities, we did add a tab and some resources that are focused specifically on diversity for our teachers. So there's a website put up specifically on diversity for our teachers. So they can begin looking at that and planning this summer.
Right. You know, there's just a mindset by some folks that we're not doing anything positive to address these concerns. And I take exception with that. We are, in my opinion. So I understand there's folks that think we need to take some kind of monumental action this evening. But what I really want to do is make sure what we do helps address the situation and make things better. And I don't want, if we can come up with something that dovetails into what we're doing and helps make that better, I get that. But I don't want to create like parallel trains going down different tracks that could conflict with each other either.
I think it'd be helpful to have something written and have the exploration take place before the next board meeting. I don't consider that a punt. And I think a board level attention to this is appropriate.
Any other comments before we vote on the motion?
Hey, Max, I forgot to ask you, can you remember, or can you make time for public comment in the agenda items like we've been doing?
Oh, yeah.
Thank you.
We will.
I need you to talk about where we are again, because we're an amended motion again, and I don't know where we're at.
No, there's been no amendment to this.
So we
There was a
did it
motion.
conditional, and then Megan amended it to have it go to formation, or?
No.
There was no motion. Okay, all right. Sorry, I'm just trying to keep up.
The resolution that was brought before us, there was no motion on that. Then Megan brought forward an alternate motion. But that motion is not. And that motion
You want to address it.
was create this board level standing committee.
I'd like to amend the motion to not be a standing committee today, but to be an exploratory committee.
I didn't hear your motion, Merle.
I would just change the word standing to exploratory, and we could move it up at a future board meeting with some written background.
We've got a motion to make it exploratory. Is there a second to that? Okay, so that dies for fail in a second. Any other comments on the agenda that, I'm sorry, on the motion that was presented? Okay, before we vote on this, we typically will allow 5 minutes if there's anybody that's got questions or comments in the room. Wants to add anything? Yes,
I think we have
Mrs. Glover, she don't. Glover, go ahead. Oh, we don't have you. She's muted now. Okay, go ahead.
I think that it's really showing a lack of consideration to a board member when she makes a motion and then without even voting or voting it down, you automatically make it. We already know that you don't want to address racism. It's clear that you don't want to address racism, but this is just I gotta say ridiculous. That's I mean, don't get me wrong. I respect you as board members, but it seems that when Megan did make the motion, she was very disrespectful, and I don't know. I think that's just showing that I don't know what. Do you not believe that racism exists? Do you not believe that racism exists in Muhammad? Do you not believe that racism exists in Muhammad's school system? Do you not believe that my children are affected by this school system? This is terrible. Do you think this is going to end? Muhammad is the best place to start this. Get the conversation going. Let's get it moving. Do something. Just something.
So
that was a great suggestion to start a committee. You want to know when it's going to end. That's not okay. You're trying to end it before you get it started. I'm done.
Are there any other public comments? Will the board members respond?
Looks like Maggie would like to speak. She's on the WebEx.
Maggie?
You want to know when it's going to end. I'm done.
Maggie, are there any other public comments?
Yes. First, I'd like to Dr. Hall. I want to thank Dr. Hall for her comments at the beginning of this. And at this point, Yeah. Yes.
Maggie,
First,
Maggie, can you please stop YouTube video?
hi. Are you able to hear me? I'm sorry. For comments at the beginning of this.
The YouTube video in the background.
I'm so sorry.
You got YouTube.
Okay.
You got
I have this.
meeting going.
You got me now?
Speak on WebEx. And we're getting.
I just figured that out. I'm really sorry.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, sorry about that. Yes, I would like to thank Dr. Hall for her comments in the beginning. Also, I guess I cannot understand what would be the objective or be objectionable about forming a committee. I guess I cannot understand what could possibly be wrong about that. It is absolutely a legitimate next step. So I would hate for you to this just signifies that you're yet wanting to stall more. Why can you not just say, yes, we are willing to form a committee to discuss and look into this further?
Okay. Thank you. All right, I think we've done 5 minutes, unless anyone else has something they want to interject. Board members, any further comments from board members?
I'm going to say this. When we met on June 22nd, and I have read this a lot of times, and I've read it with multiple people, my understanding that was we were going to have dialogue and discussion of it tonight to everyone that's listening. And I don't want to be forced to make a decision after everything just comes out, because I don't just serve myself. I serve the people of this community. It is clear what your expectations are through this supplemental material. One of the concerns I have is you're asking me to make a decision without seeing how the plan that we had in place would be executed. Again, it was presumed that we were doing nothing when we were doing something. And I'm not comfortable with that. And with all due respect, I have committed my life to working with people of different cultures within Champaign County when I lived there, and being an instructor at the university, and working in the schools throughout this county, not this one because I can't work here. So, I mean, it is hurtful to have that said, because it is heavy on my heart that we do the right thing, the right way. And people call me all the time. They put it out there, and I want to show people that I am listening to what they say. That's all I'll say.
I don't think anybody disagrees that we wouldn't be willing to consider a committee. We just want more information. So I don't think what's wrong with asking for more information. We're not saying no to anything tonight.
I agree.
Any other comments?
I think Mrs. Glover would like to say something.
Okay, we've had the 5 minutes of public input, but we'll go ahead and make one exception and do one more.
I appreciate that. I just want to say that they're asking to form a committee. Who knows what will come out of it? Forming a committee is not asking you to commit to anything except letting Megan head a committee, which I'm sure she's very capable of, and to hear what people have to say and give her a chance. She's forming a committee. The committee will report to you, and you will still have the chance to make the decisions.
You?
That's all I have.
Okay, and just to be clear, I do not have a problem with a committee. What I have a concern is about conflicting committees. Because we've got a committee as part of our plan that's going to unfold under Dr. Romel's plan. And if we've got a structure where we are sure the committees can work together, that's one thing. But I want some thought into how this is going to work before we just throw a committee up there. That's where I'm at, I suppose.
Who is on the diversity committee that's already been established by the district?
So that committee, I just want to be clear. We had a lot of discussions when we were meeting, when I was meeting with the faculty at U of I in the School of Social Work and Dr. Carter Black as an expert on diversity on when and how we wanted to form that committee. And it was recommended that we form the committee after the town hall meetings so that we really knew what we would be working towards and we could get the community members, not only those that wanted to be on the committee, but really recruit some others who may be more reluctant to be a part of that committee because of their past experiences within the district. And the feeling was if you start this committee before you have that town hall and before you listen, that there may be certain members on the committee that have a certain direction that they want that committee to go before they've heard from all of the people in the community. And the recommendation was then to wait and start after you heard from everybody so that everybody would be coming onto that committee at the same time and would be on equal footing instead of some people coming on after and feeling like they were coming on board to something that had already been predetermined, the route that it was going. That was for recommendation. That was how we had set this up. Ideally, we would have had a committee together by summer, but we had to cancel the town halls, and that's why we don't have a committee right now.
I think that makes a lot of sense. I don't know what's wrong with that plan.
I think it's a great plan.
Who is
Susan Jackson would like to talk.
Who is determining what is going to happen at the town halls and how those are going to run?
So I will say that we've been working with Dr. Tan for almost 3 years now, and he and Dr. Carter Black were going to facilitate those town halls. They are the experts, they are social workers, they are experienced in doing that and would be much better at leading that out than I would. It's not, honestly, my area of expertise.
I wasn't suggesting that you would lead them. I was just asking how that was set up. So thank you for answering.
I feel like we read all the time about neighboring districts partnering with the university, and this is a super opportunity for us to partner with the university School of Social Work experts to help us get the ground running. And in fact, I think that it's an opportunity instead of the backfold, and I'm sorry that it's looked at that way by some of you.
So what steps have we taken as a district over the past 3 years? Besides these scheduling town halls?
We did present this extensively on June 22nd. Dr. Rommel made a whole presentation about this. And we can go over it again, but it has been brought forth and explained in detail.
Dr. Rommel, could you just hit the highlights of what you presented before?
Yes, I honestly don't have the timeline or the information
I know.
right now. But,
fine. It's fine. We don't go over it again.
Okay.
I guess I feel like we need to move forward. And if we've been working on it for 3 years and we still don't even have the committee formed to talk about it, that I just want us to move forward so that we can address the things we've heard. When I heard what people said, it broke my heart. There are so many people who have come and talked about how they've been hurt. It doesn't feel like, in my opinion, we've been having a loving response to people who are expressing to us their hurt. And I want to be able to create a mechanism that we could address that. A committee doesn't tell anyone what to do. It doesn't make any decisions. It says we want to listen and think about what some of the possibilities are for solutions.
That's just exactly what Nicole
Move
just
forward.
said. That Nicole just said that, and it seems like we have a plan in place. We have been limited by restrictions related to the pandemic. Otherwise, there probably would be a committee in place already. And they've been thinking about this and had put a lot of thought into it over a period of years. And instead of making a reactionary suggestion, that we're doing it with some thought. I don't see anything. What's wrong with that?
I can't understand why we're putting so much weight behind this decision. We're not allocating funds. We're not allocating staff. We're not changing the school year. We're not doing anything consequential yet. We're just saying you can create a group of people to get together and talk about things that the board can do to make a difference. I think that we're making this too big of a deal.
I beg to differ. A board committee officially does allocate budget and staff because it's a public meeting. So let's have a plan and bring it here. I don't see what's wrong with that either. A board committee can work with the others, but yes, and if you don't fool yourself, we're not allocating funds and staff.
Megan, do you feel like you can put together the agendas and notifications necessary to line up with OMA?
I do.
So I don't know what other funds and staff we are allocating there.
If it's a board committee, it's going to be run through Dawn in the office. It's just how it has to be done.
It doesn't have to be done that way. It doesn't say that in our policy.
If it's a
It
board
doesn't have to be
committee,
done that way.
it's public. It's a public meeting.
Why can't Megan sit down with Nicole and Lindsay and have a conversation about what this might look like, have an understanding of what the thought process has been already? I think Nicole's already given us some thoughts of what has gone into this, some recommendations from experts in the field. It's not a punt. I mean, we want to put some thought into these things. And I think it's completely appropriate to follow the path that we've been on. I just don't understand.
What kind of committee did they call this?
Any other comments?
Our practice for board committees has been that there are 2 members on the committee, and we don't even know who the second would be. So I think bringing a plan is a wise choice for the next board meeting.
Susie Jackson had her hand up.
We've already had 5 minutes.
We've already spent the 5 minutes of input. I apologize, but I made one exception. I said that would be the only exception. All right. Any other board members with comment? Okay. So this is a roll call vote on the motion that we form the board level committee that Megan put in the motion. Go ahead, Nicole.
Schultz,
Yes.
Giles,
No.
Larson, no. Keith,
Yes.
Hennessy,
Yes.
Hendricks,
No.
McComb.
No. Okay. Anything else on racism? The resolution. I think Merle left the door open if we want to come back with a more specific proposal with a little more detail. We can look at that. All right, item 9, COVID-19 resolution.
Right, this was actually contained in the board packet on the 20th, and that meeting ran a tad bit long, so didn't actually discuss it, but did mention I would be bringing it back and recommending approval of the resolution. Our attorneys at Franzek actually drafted this, as well as including the checklist that goes with it. It's meant to provide, in passing the resolution, allows for changes to be made to the plan, our school reopening plan, if necessary. We're obviously responding, as we can see by the changes with the IDSA and the IHSA, are just some of the examples of the changes and different I guess, flexibilities that we need in the current environment regarding school reopening plans right now. The resolution allows for us to carry out the plan administratively, utilizes the protections that are already afforded under the Illinois Tort Immunity Act, and it also eliminates the need to amend policies should a reopening plan be necessary to implement that. If there's some part of the plan that contradicts any board policies. So it's a reflection of the times that we're living in, and that's what the resolution covers.
Superintendent recommends the board approve the attached resolution from our attorneys as presented. Is there a motion to do that?
Move that in order to exhibit flexibility during this global pandemic and to acknowledge the changing nature of individual family and community circumstances, parents will be permitted to switch their child between any currently offered learning plan anytime they deem a switch to be beneficial to their child and or family.
Second.
Okay, that's not what was on the table. Okay. So can we repeat that, please?
Sure.
And then email it to Dawn too.
And then email it to Dawn so we have it.
Sure. I move that in order to exhibit flexibility during this global pandemic and to acknowledge the changing nature of individual family and community circumstances, parents will be permitted to switch their child between any currently offered learning plan anytime they deem a switch to be beneficial to their child and or family. I believe that we need to offer to our community the same flexibility that we are asking for as a district. And so I believe that we should permit those changes.
Lindsay, do we already allow for people to switch from in-person to online only or remote learning at any time?
Yeah, we ask them to commit for a semester, and that's so that we can allow our teachers to know who they're teaching and not have kids switching back and forth between teachers and classes. We understand that it was a hard decision to make, but we have teachers at the K-5 level who are going to be exclusively teaching just the remote kids. And so we're talking about kids popping in and out of different teachers' classes throughout the semester.
And I think that it will be difficult, but I'm going to quote Mark Cabuti when I say flexibility is critical and flexibility is hard, because flexibility requires give and take. And I think as we get older as adults, that give and take becomes a little more challenging for us. But being flexible allows us to work together for the benefit of our children and our students. And if we really want to do what's best for students, we will acknowledge that sometimes students are in a position and families are in a position that requires a change of their circumstance. Mark Cabuti goes on to say, what we have to remember too is that the situation is going to change daily. And when the rules change constantly, it causes more challenges as far as being flexible. But we can do this. I've seen it. I know we can do it. So let's be flexible, and I think we'll get to a happier chapter. We need to be just as flexible as we're asking the community to be with us. And I would think we need to ask the community to be flexible with us. But if a kid is in a situation that's individual and it's the plan they're in is good for them, I think we need to be able to allow kids to change, to do what's best for them, even if it makes a little bit more work for us.
So does that flexibility include my kids coming to school every day because I think that's best for them?
Jeremy, actually, I believe that is true.
So I can send my kids to school every day if we change this.
Well, actually, my motion says that you can choose any plan that the district is offering at the time.
But you're asking for flexibility, so why can't we be flexible to have kids in school every day? We need to be flexible.
It is my belief that if we're putting kids in school in a way that is not safe, which is what we've chosen to do right now, not in line with UPHD, I'm really confused as to why we would not just let them go full time.
I'm confused as to why this wasn't brought to us earlier so we could put it on the agenda and have some time to think about it, prepare for it, and then why we're blindsiding board members and the staff with it at the last minute.
And it would be a nightmare to schedule without some kind of commitment. I can't imagine. I'm going to show up for your class this day and then I'm not going to show up. I mean, and if you're wanting to follow precedent of everybody that you're talking about guidelines, most of the neighboring districts have said the same thing. You know, you have to commit for a certain amount of time.
But most of our neighboring school districts have also committed to the parents for a semester. This is our plan, and this is how it's going to be the whole entire semester. Now pick. They didn't say pick a plan, and then we might change the plan, but when we change the plan, you can't change your plan. The community is pretty up in arms about this. So I think it's only fair that we discuss this. And the reason I feel like we need to discuss it now is because we're talking about a proposal to let the district change the plan on a whim. And if you're,
I think it's only fair to warn board members about what we want to put on the agenda to talk about and to warn staff that we're going to put on the agenda to talk about.
Right.
Because when I came and spoke, well, I didn't come, I was online last time, I was speaking for everybody that I heard from, and I was the same thing. I think what's best is to start a certain way. So.
And I don't think I criticized you for saying that. I think you were.
Change the reopening plan to be made by any of the board members. I like what Colleen is suggesting. I have to be honest, I've been very concerned about this families that are making a decision, for example, to go virtual because they're able to work a shift at night or work a shift where daycare works. I'm very worried that there are going to be circumstances where people's shifts are going to change. You know, they're going to be staff members quarantined, and then people are going to have to shift, and they're not going to have an option because their employer. Their option is going to be lose my job, do what I'm told, and then what will happen is the kids will be left home alone. That's really concerning to me. So I think we need to have the same kind of flexibility that we would want any employer of the people in our community to have. We're asking the people in our community to have for the district.
I don't understand what this motion has to do with the resolution in front of us. And I don't understand the comment about a whim. What I'm looking at in paragraph 3 says the superintendent's authorized to do the things that the public bodies say we ought to do and bring it to the board if we need to. None of that is a whim. And I don't know why, are you seeking to replace this resolution or have it be in addition to?
I'm seeking to understand the board's position on whether or not we believe there should be flexibility. And that's a value that we have as a board and a priority, that we would want to choose what's best for kids at all times and allow kids to be in a position that their parents deem best when we are offering different options. And I need to understand the answer to that question before we move on. And the only way we can make a decision.
But I don't understand what it has to do with the resolution in front of us. Why derail us discussing this resolution? That could still be something to be discussed if it was put on the agenda.
It is something that I feel as a board member that I need to understand before we move forward. And the reality is
why was that not given to us to put on the agenda then?
because we received an email saying that you didn't want to put things on the agenda.
No, you did not. You received an email saying I did not want to put undefined action items on the agenda.
If we're gonna be transparent, we have to tell people what we're gonna talk about, okay?
This is what I would this is what I need to know. And we have a history on this board of having a conversation, and when there's not a vote taken, then everyone is confused later as to what happened in the conversation. And so I'm trying to have a conversation about this, but actually make a motion so that we all understand what the conversation was when the conversation was over. So this is part of my conversing about.
Why isn't it agenda item 14?
I'm sorry?
Why didn't you bring this up when we approved the agenda? We have a resolution in front of us.
But this is part of the discussion of that resolution. It's not a separate.
How it is.
The resolution gives the power to the superintendent to change the plan at any point in time and enact the authority granted to the superintendent and the designees in the resolution that will supersede any other policy or rule of the board. So I think it's kind of important to understand what plan we're talking about and then the rules associated with changes to that plan in order to discuss this resolution in an informed manner. This resolution, carte blanche, gives the superintendent the ability to change plans and supersede board policy. And if that is part of what we are going to discuss, understanding what we will allow the parents to do when that happens is part of this resolution.
Can we try to focus on the action that's on the floor? And the resolution, I think, is going to come next.
Not so sure.
What section of the resolution were you just quoting?
Section 4. This resolution turns over all of the board's decision-making authority and essentially turns over all policies to a single person's decision point, which, if we're going to talk about the resolution, I think is extraordinarily dangerous and undemocratic. But, you know, I think in order to understand and talk about that, we have to understand the framework that we're talking about. And I think Colleen's trying to understand, if changes are made in this manner, do parents have flexibility to change as well? Or is this a one-sided set of decisions?
The section 4 starts out all in pursuant to number 3 above. which is still subject to board approval.
No. The changes shall, however, remain in full force and effect until such time as the board acts unless otherwise required by law. So changes go into effect immediately after consultation with the board president.
With full authority on the board to change anything.
Well, you know, I guess, I'm just gonna be real frank, I guess with that it comes down to a trust issue. There's times we're gonna have to make probably some pretty quick decisions on what we're gonna do this year. And we either trust our superintendent to make the call or we don't.
We already have policies in place that allow the superintendent to act in case of an emergency or changing situation. She can close school at any point in time for weather or any reason. In spring, we closed school without this resolution. I'm not sure why existing ask about this resolution, but I think we need to finish with the motion on the table on the floor
So
first.
now we're blending things together. We're discussing the resolution now, we're discussing Colleen's motion. I think we need.
There's a motion on the floor. We have to close that out.
All right, so is everybody ready to vote on Colleen's motion? Roll call vote, please.
Larson.
No.
Henry.
No.
Giles.
No.
Hennessy.
Yes?
Steve.
Yes.
Schultz.
Yes.
McCoy.
No.
Okay, is there a motion on the resolution?
So moved.
Second. We've got a motion and a second to approve the attached resolution and checklist as presented by Dr. Hall, as recommended by legal counsel. Is there further discussion on that?
I have some questions on Franzic's web resolution. It talks about contacting the attorney to make specific decisions based on the district's needs. Can you tell us who had that discussion with the attorney, what the specific decision points were and how they are reflected in this document?
I spoke with Brian Crowley briefly about the resolution, asked him some questions. Beyond that, talked with about the benefits of and the need for passing this.
What risk are we put at if we don't pass this?
I don't know the answer to that question.
Are there current policies that we don't feel are sufficient for starting this school year that are in conflict with the plans that we put forth?
I don't know, we know whether there are any offhand, but it's possible as things unfold, there may be.
And I think the resolution accounts for those things.
Right.
I think this resolution.
What would the reason be that we have the ability as a board to call meetings in emergency situations within 24-hour notice? I guess I'm wondering what situation would warrant this big a policy decision change that the board wouldn't be able to meet in an emergency situation and discuss that in specifics?
That's hard to define right out of the gate. I will comment that in the past, there's been situations that I kind of felt were emergency, and it would be good to have a meeting in 24 hours. I've been told by legal counsel, my definition of emergency wasn't their definition of emergency, and it wouldn't work. So I will say that the legal definition of emergency is much more narrow than I ever thought it was.
So the resolution describes protection from the tort fund. Do we not have protection from the tort fund if we don't adopt this resolution?
Yes, from the Illinois Tort Immunity Act, yes.
So we do not have protection from that without this resolution?
Oh, we do, I said we do. We do.
We do, okay. So I'm still trying to understand the need for this resolution if we already have that coverage.
That's just one component of the resolution. The other components are outlined there. And I don't really have anything more to say about it. I mean, I think it speaks for itself, and the board has the opportunity to vote it up or down.
I really like the sentence here that says that the resolution eliminates in most cases the immediate need to identify and amend existing policies which conflict with the reopening plans. So this puts the reopening plan resolution on top of our other policies, as we need to handle the kids' safety,
Or at least temporarily.
at least, exactly. And the board is absolutely involved in that, with the ability to say yay, nay, or either way.
What's the mechanism for informing the board, the staff, the students, and the parents of changes to policies in the plan that are in conflict with our existing policies so that they are informed? The policies are a contract that we have with our staff and our students and our parents. So just having a resolution that says we can change it doesn't actually accomplish what I think we need to do to fulfill that contract with those folks. So what's the mechanism for changing something this urgently and then rolling that out in a way that we are sure is going to be effective in communicating that with the necessary parties?
We would use our typical mechanisms to communicate. Email.
So what would preclude us from using that mechanism without this resolution?
We do use that mechanism already.
This gives us legal authority to have more local control for safety of the students because of the pandemic, without having to pour over every other policy we have and fix those before we can make a decision.
But what policies have we already, this kind of assumes that we have policies that are in conflict with the existing plan that we have to go back to school. So I'm wondering what those policies are that we've identified that are in conflict with the plan.
Nobody's gone through all those yet in the comprehensive review.
Well, I also think that one of the underlying tenets of the resolution is the fact that there's so much that's unknown in the future. I mean, we're rewriting public education every day as we move forward. So frankly, it's hard to say and predict how this might play out. I don't know. I've never done this.
Isn't that kind of hypocritical, though, to say tell the parents they don't have that same choice? That it's changing for you, but not for them?
Well, I think the understanding is that there's going to be change. So, and we have to be able to make changes quickly. And there's going to be people upset. I can guarantee that. We can't stop that. But we also have to continue to be able to move forward without calling a board meeting every time we want to make a decision.
But we have policies in place that give the superintendent very broad authority to make changes to policy and make decisions about school already. I have concerns about a policy that temporarily suspends any policy or rule, and we're willing to do that without actually looking at what the implications of that are for our staff and students. If there is a situation that I'm not thinking of, I can't think of an emergent situation or example where we could not get together a quorum to discuss and make appropriate choices. If you can give me that example, I'd be willing to entertain that. But this is a broad sweeping change to the democratic process of this board. And I have real concerns with that. It's very similar to the Patriot Act and 9/11. We have these broad sweeping statements about public safety, and we take out the democratic and check and balance process that's required for us to do our due diligence to think about things. And we allow decisions to be made in highly emotionally charged and critical times that don't force the pause of taking a breath and understanding what those changes will mean when they are rolled out.
I'll just say this, Frantic is probably the leading school attorneys in the state. They're recommending we adopt this during this time of the pandemic. And if you disagree with that, then vote against it.
I haven't had the opportunity to ask them the questions. This document was based on their website, tailored for this district. And it hasn't been shared with me what we tailored and what decision points there were that gave us this specific document for Mahomet-Seymour.
That's why it's a policy.
Which board members worked on developing this resolution?
This resolution was written and came from Franzek. They drafted it. They're the legal experts. They're recommending we approve it. What was inserted here was Mahomet-Seymour Schools reopening plan dated July 20th, 2020. And at the very bottom in section 4, board policy 2-240. This was included in the board packet 2 weeks ago, and I got no questions about it. It's been ample time to call, ask, discuss. It was stated in the July 20th board packet that this would be on the agenda tonight.
But this is supposed to be a board discussion. And the only way for the board to have a discussion about its resolution is to do it in a public meeting. These sidebar conversations are not the way that we are supposed to conduct business. And so I think it's important that we have board level discussion about board level resolutions openly in accordance with the open meeting
Call
act.
the superintendent and ask questions. When's the last time you actually talked to Lindsay outside of a board meeting?
And ask the question.
We're taking
I'm not
kids
sure what
away.
that. Excuse me?
We're taking kids' rights away to education. We started it by going from 5 to 2, and now we're picking whether we're going to let them come and change their mind. I mean, we have an obligation to educate kids, and we can't even get going to make it a safe place for them. I'm dumbfounded.
I was not suggesting that discussion should be shut down. I was suggesting that I'm available at all times to answer questions. That's
Okay, but
it.
I just asked the question and I didn't get an answer.
Normally, the precedent is that you ask if we ran it through legal, and we did. So my goodness, I would have thought, since it came out in the packet, that not only covered all of us, but it made you feel satisfied.
I just am asking, on the forensic website, it says, contact us if you would like this document to be put together for your organization. Who in our organization did that? Ask that request of forensic.
I did.
She did.
I said that.
And then who tailored this?
Frantic did.
It's tailored by saying the Mahomet-Seymour Schools reopening plan dated July 20th, 2020. That's the tailoring. And at the very top of the resolution where our school district's name is in there. That's it. The rest of it is drafted by Franzek. They're the experts.
In section 3, it says that any changes to the plan shall be made in consultation with the president of the board and then promptly reported to the board, which may affirm, modify, or disapprove of the changes. What is the mechanism for how we do that?
I would communicate with the board. There's always the opportunity per board policy for the board president or 3 board members to call a special meeting or an emergency meeting. If that were the sentiment, then that could happen.
It would probably be communicated by email in most cases.
Can you remind me, what's the time frame for calling a special board meeting? How quickly can we call a special board meeting?
24 hours.
24 hours for an emergency meeting. 48 hours for a special.
Yeah, 48 for special, 24 for emergency.
So can you give us an example of a kind of decision that would need to be made so quickly that it wouldn't fall under the existing policy for you to make emergency decisions, that we couldn't just meet in 3 days' time and make the decision?
No,
So in my opinion, looking at this resolution,
I think offhand that's hard to do, but again, we're at unprecedented times. We can't, we do our best to anticipate everything we can, but there's certainly things that are going to arise that we've not anticipated, despite everyone's best efforts.
I can imagine a list that's 40 pages long that comes from press for us to change policies, writ large on a number of things that we do here. And the state has made those things, and the state has proven to change their mind inside of 7 days every given week. This resolution, in my mind, gives us more control than what we would have from the standard order of business from the state.
no, I have to disagree. This resolution is just a blatant abdication of our responsibilities. I mean, you really can't, come on guys, let's be honest with each other. This resolution is delegating the decision-making to our superintendent.
And she needs to be able to make some decisions, Ken. What's wrong with that?
She is able to make those decisions.
Our school district.
This delegates all decision-making to her.
No, it doesn't.
I disagree with you, Ken.
Actually, I'm sorry, it delegates it to her and Max as the president, which I also have a problem with, since we are supposed to be 7 equal members of this board.
Right. I think it comes down to a trust issue, which was already stated. I think we just need to vote. I mean,
Anyone have anything new to add to the discussion?
I don't understand.
I don't think we need any more discussion. I mean, let's. Gosh.
I think Colleen gets to ask her question.
She can. That's fine.
Ask your question.
I need to understand the exact reopening plan that is stated as the Mahomet-Seymour reopening plan dated July 20th. What parameters of that plan, even just the broad parameters? And is that in line with what we voted on in the last meeting?
So exactly what we voted on last meeting, isn't it?
I believe.
I think that's a.
I think our plan's been emailed.
Yeah, the plan has been emailed. You can read it. I mean, this is getting ridiculous. It really is.
We're in a pandemic. We don't know what we're doing. We're trying to do the very best that we can and make decisions. We went along with what the reopening task force wanted, which was a sign of collaborating and communicating, and we can't get past this with an attorney's recommendation. I do ask regularly about the legal fees. We need to think about every time that we need to ask an attorney then. I mean, we did it, we covered ourselves. Not everybody's gonna be happy all the time. My favorite color is red and Jeremy likes blue, but you know what? I'm gonna sit next to him anyway, and I'm gonna still like red and he's still gonna like blue.
Okay.
I still don't understand why this resolution is necessary. We have mechanisms in place. This directly we're asking us to supersede any policy or other rule of the board and temporarily suspend any such policy or rule to the extent that any policy or rule is inconsistent with the plan. We don't even have the entire plan outlined. I have parents asking me, why are my kids only going to school 2 days a week? People don't understand the plan. I think it is fair to say that the plan needs to be outlined in its specifics And we can't be superseding, what is the mechanism for informing when a plan change is made? And if in a board, by the board, I don't understand the need for this resolution. And approve it anyway, then we should just do the work of the board. This resolution is not providing us anything.
Megan, I think what this resolution is providing is the ability to not have to make unpopular decisions, uncomfortable decisions by the board.
No, I disagree.
That's not what it is. Is there anything else before we vote? Nicole, roll call, please.
Beth,
Yes.
Keith,
No?
Henry,
Yes.
Schultz,
No.
Larson,
Yes.
Hennessy,
No.
Capone.
Yes. Item 10, Kids Club rate. Give Dr. Rummel just a second here, jot down a couple things, and she's pulling double duty.
So we, with the shift in the school day for our K-5 students, needed to adjust our Kids Club rates to accommodate the half day when kids are either in AM or PM with their teacher, that additional time before the after school time. In doing so, we tried really hard to keep childcare costs to a minimum for parents. There is one correction, and that is the half day and after school would be $22, not $21. It's $11 if you do the by day payment for a half day only, and it's $11 by day for after school only, making that $22 instead of $21. Maximum payment per parent per student would be $100 a week. So there's multiple discounts in there so that we try to keep it at $100 for the week. If parents need to take advantage of both breakfast, the half day, the after school time, if they need to take advantage of all of it. So my recommendation would be to approve the change in rates. These are not necessarily increases in rates, just additional costs. And then there's a break in there for staff, as there always has been. Additionally, we talked about going October 1st. Is the my understanding that the board was hoping that students would all be in school 5 days a week for 5.5 hours. So I have put in 2 payment schedules in here. One, if that is a Tuesday through Thursday, 5.5 hours. Another, if that is a Monday through Friday for 5.5 hours, so that they don't have to bring to you Kids Club rates again.
Dr. Hall and Dr. Rummel recommend the board approve the rate schedule as has been presented. Is there a motion to do that?
So moved.
Is there a second? Second. Discussion.
I noticed some staff specific rates. Do we have an idea how many staff actually have kids in Kids Club?
It's staff, we always put staff kids in first and then work off the parents. I don't know exactly.
It's less than 20 for both of our buildings together.
Okay.
Less than 20.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bridget.
Where is Kids Club held?
We have one at Lincoln Trail and one at Middletown Prairie.
Yes, but where specifically in the building is Kids Club held?
So this year we'll be keeping groups of less than 30. So they will be in 3 separate locations at each of 3 buildings.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you. Where in the building?
They are in groups of 30 or less. So they will be in 3 separate locations in each of the buildings. Those are different locations in each building.
And what location is it going to be?
So at Lincoln Trail, it will be in the, I don't know what you call that wing, but it'll be in the band music cafeteria area. And at Middletown Prairie, it will likely be in, we're finalizing the location here, so it could change. but it will be in the cafeteria, gym, and library are the areas we're looking at right now. But again, those are not set.
Okay.
Other questions for Dr. Romo?
So I'm sorry, are any of these rates an increase from last year?
So yes, they are. If you go down to the bottom where it says rates when students are attending a 5.5-hour rate, it'll tell you that rates were previously $11 a day, and now they're going to be $12.50 a day. But the kids will also be there for more time than they were this past school year.
So the rates are scaled up slightly, but our time that we're running Kids Club, and therefore the staffing needs are greater also.
And I will say staffing needs are greater anyway because of having to put the kids in smaller groups and being able to rely less on student workers and having to rely more on adult workers. So there is an increased cost this year.
So does this increase cover the running that program?
It will cover the cost. We probably will not make as much money this year, but my goal is to keep the rates down for parents. This is an expense that a lot of parents were not expecting.
I mean, I guess my question is if we're still profitable, we need to increase it all. Can't we afford, where does that money go? Why increase it if we're already covering the cost of the program?
Money goes into our general budget. It's part of the money that we budget for. If kids are going to be there longer, it costs more money to have them there.
I don't know that we know we're going to make any money this year, really, because you're not raising costs proportional to the extra time. So we know
You can have added students throughout the year too, right?
So we're being very careful with the number of students that we have because if I want to adjust a group, I need to be able to do that. So keep the numbers under 50. So
will these numbers allow us to socially distance these kids during these times?
yes, that's why we have to limit the number of kids and the number of spaces that we use.
So they'll be 6 feet socially distanced, or what? How far apart will they be?
6 feet as best we can, keeping in mind that these are children ages 5 to 10.
Sorry, you broke up. I didn't hear the last part of that.
I said social distancing the best that we can, keeping in mind that these are children, ages 5 to 10, 5 to 11. So we have enough space, but kids don't stay in one space. They tend to move.
But how will that be structured? Will we be structuring it the same way that we do the buses and the classrooms and assigning them spots?
Yes. But we also have built in, they're going to have time to play. They're going to have their encore time. If they're here for the half day, they've got time where they have to work. They have to do their remote work just like everybody else. So they'll have a time for that. And then in the after school time, they'll have a time. They need to play. They need to move. They're children. So we'll have outdoor time built in. We're working on getting equipment so that they can do some other movement things while they're in the building and other games. But it's really hard because a lot of playing is closer than 6 feet. So we are taking precautions for that. Absolutely. Can I guarantee that a kid will stay 6 feet apart from everybody else for the entire time that they're at Kids Club? I cannot.
And so, I'm sorry, can you talk a little bit more about the learning that will go on in Kids Club? I guess I did not understand that there was going to be that component of it.
So all kids are required for 5 hours of instruction a day. And when we did the half day for elementary, the other half of the day was remote or off-campus learning. Our Kids Club students have to do that remote portion as well. So they will be doing their encore time, they'll be doing their independent learning, their writing, all of that, just like a kid would be doing it at home, they'll be doing it during that portion of Kids Club.
And who's going to oversee that? And will they have access to help for that?
The Kids Club staff will. This should be work that kids should be able to do independently during the second half of the day. Kids Club staff are adults. They should be able to supervise it.
I'm sorry, but aren't we talking about the Kids Club rate increase? This is like way off topic. I'm sorry to put that upon you, but we're talking about a Kids Club rate increase.
I'm just trying to understand. I just asked a question that snowballed into more questions.
I have a question about the rate. I'm a little concerned about our discussion where we're talking about making money on this. The school code states when it's talking about before and after school programs, the school board may charge parents of participating students a fee not to exceed the actual cost of such before and after school programs. But seems to indicate that we can't make money.
This Kids Club is not programming, it's childcare.
I thought we just said that they were going to do schoolwork. It says time for homework, physical activity, afternoon nutritional snack.
It would be the equivalent of a child going to a child care provider, a second grader going to a sitter or a child care provider in the afternoon and doing that remote work there. We're just providing the child care and supervision.
I don't understand the difference. When I read the law and it defines it to develop and maintain before and after school programs for students in kindergarten through 6th grade. The programs may include time for homework, physical activity, afternoon snacks, and educational offerings, which are in addition to those in the regular school day.
Typically, Kids Club doesn't include additional education. It does now because of our half-day schedule.
It doesn't. It is not. They are not providing child instruction.
Well, that's true. It provides an opportunity for them to do the remote work now because they're going to have that opportunity, and these kids need a place to go.
Could we run this program if we don't raise these rates?
So you're asking me to have kids come for the entire day minus the 2 hours or 2.5 hours that they are with their classroom teacher to childcare for the same rate that they were paying to go after school for 2.5 hours last year.
No.
I have no rate.
I can see that you're irritated by my question. I'm just asking if this program would pay for itself if we did not raise the rates.
No, because we're extending the length of time and we're adding to add more staff.
So we
But
would
we're not raising the rate proportionally.
So we could not pay for this program without raising these rates.
Not under the current plan. Not unless we cut the amount of time back, which, that doesn't work for parents.
There is no rate for the time that we haven't provided care for this amount of time before.
Are there any other questions? Go home, please.
Tennessee?
No.
Schultz?
Yes.
Keith?
Yes.
Giles?
Yes.
Henrik?
Yes.
Larson?
Yes.
McComb?
Yes. Item 11, additional staffing, Dr. Hall.
I had alerted the board to this need in an email about a week ago, and just bringing this forward for approval.
Thank you, Mr. Cooney.
So the elementary team leader positions, which would be a new stipend position, just for this year. Right now, we would reevaluate and see if we want to continue it. But it provides just a layer of support and leadership and communication for our principals right now. That would be extremely helpful in the building leadership structure and carrying out our different plans. There's a lot of collaboration and decision-making that is going on, and to have a grade level representative would be very helpful.
Okay, so the superintendent recommends the board approve the stipend positions of elementary team leaders for the 2021 school year at a cost of $12,000. Is there a motion to do that?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion. Hearing none, roll call vote, please.
Hendricks,
Yes.
Hennessy,
Yes.
Schultz,
No.
Larson,
Yes.
Giles,
Yes.
Keith,
No.
McCollum.
Yes. Item 12. COVID update. Is there anything about COVID we want to discuss that we've not discussed?
Has there been any decisions made about how transportation is going to work?
We're putting together bus routes now. I think the goal from Mr. York is to have that information out by
2 weeks before school starts. I think that'd be next week.
that's this week.
This week. Yes.
We just got, we just finalized, our final AB days and half days, so I don't know that we would be able to have it done in 2 days.
That was the final piece that he needed, was to know who was going to be on the A and the B days, to know how to schedule the routes.
And what kind of social distancing are we going to maintain on the buses?
50 students
We
per
can
bus.
have 50 students on a bus. Keep
So
kids
how far apart?
2 kids to a seat.
They'll be
So
wearing masks.
So the
On the
kids will
bus.
be shoulder to shoulder, basically?
Not
Depends on the size of
necessarily.
the kid and the seat.
The guideline of 50 comes from the Illinois Department of Public Health.
I know, I'm just asking how far apart the kids will actually be on the bus.
Well, I think it depends on the size of the kid and the bus route and how many, I mean, the maximum is 50. There could very well be buses that have less than that, which is likely given the number of kids who are actually coming to school at any given time.
And in the mornings, are we going to be screening the kids before they get on the bus?
No. They'll be screened when they get to school.
Are we worried about that? There's some bus routes that are about an hour long.
Well, part of the problem we have is just supervision at bus stops is often an issue. Parents are not, they sometimes leave their kids there. Also the issue of who on the bus would be responsible for the screening process.
Is there going to be any staff on the bus to make sure that they are keeping their masks on and not touching each other and stuff like that?
We have monitors on some of our buses.
We've got monitors on some of the buses and we've got cameras on the buses.
We are relying on, I had to use the restroom, excuse me, but we are relying on the community to parent, and make sure that if their kids are sick, they're staying home, to tell your kids to stay apart, but they're kids, they're gonna move, they might not stay at the window, they might move over, so.
Yeah,
we just need
I
to
know.
make
The trouble is a bad decision by one parent doesn't just affect their child, it affects everyone's child.
I get that.
The board has set some constraints on this, so I'm going to make a motion that we maintain a minimum 3-foot distance on school buses, and we screen children before they enter the bus.
It's impossible. And
What's your budget?
Where are you coming up with the people? Who's screening them?
I'll second that so we can have discussion.
Okay. So who's screening them?
I think those details are best left to Dr. Hall. He can make the best choice there.
So even under the best of conditions, we struggle with finding transportation employees. I mean, we've got to be realistic and practical, and I understand the risk and I understand the concern.
We can't eliminate risk. Every day you walk out the door, there's risk. So even without a pandemic, poor decision by a parent can affect others as well. It's just, there's no guarantee.
I understand that. The thing is, in my opinion, given all the planning that we've done, there is no riskier spot in our situation. There's no riskier position than the busing situation, because you're going to have kids essentially shoulder to shoulder. You're going to have kids relatively unsupervised because the bus drivers are doing the important job of driving the bus. And we all know what children are like. They're going to want to take their masks off. They're going to want to be poking their neighbor. So I think we've got to set some kind of constraints as a board.
If we're not going to do that, can you explain to me what might happen if, for instance, have one of the little kids on the bus, ride the bus, get to school, go through the screening process, be pulled out because they have symptoms of COVID. Now that bus is still out there picking up more kids. Is there cleaning going on between drop-offs?
We're cleaning between routes, yes.
But
I want to clarify that I do not know do not know the exact routes, but we're going to clean buses as much as we possibly can.
So what happens to the kids on the subsequent routes who sit in that same spot that kid that we've pulled out that morning sat in? What's the process for assessing the risk of an exposure, whether or not they have to quarantine, what the communication will be with that second and third round of people sitting on the bus?
Well, Anita Bachman just happens to be here. Can you share anything on that with us?
Well, for a couple things. First of all, it's airborne and not contact, so a child sitting on the bus is not necessarily going to spread it to the next, to the next, to the next. The other thing is that we are going to continue to talk to our parents about the importance of keeping their children home if they're sick. The other thing is that if we're cleaning those buses between every route, then if a child comes off, or a teenager or whatever, if they come off of a bus, we pull them because we don't think that they have a fever or whatever. For whatever reason, we pull them off. Then that bus is going to be cleaned before the next group of kids gets on the bus. So we're loading the buses back to front, and then we're unloading them front to back. So kids aren't going to be passing each other on the way. The other thing is if a kid gets on the bus, and we have this all the time, if a bus driver says, you know what, this kid doesn't look like he feels good to me, they're going to sit him in the front seat in an isolated spot, and they're going to hand them the checklist to hand to the adult as soon as they get off. So that's going to mitigate a lot of that as well. So as a lot of people have said, part of the challenge is that it's going to happen that people in general are asymptomatic. So there are varying degrees of veracity right now, or validity, to even doing symptom screenings at all. And so ISB and IDPH are still saying, yes, we're going to do that. CDC is now starting to say maybe not. So we're going to do the very best we can to screen as many kids as we can. A lot of times the temperature is not going to come up for 4 or 5 days. Kids may not be symptomatic. They may come to school and go through a week and nobody's going to know that they have any issues unless a family member gets sick. So there are so many variables in all of this that we can't possibly create a scenario for every single solitary thing that may happen. We'll do the very best we can to catch as many kids as we can. And if somebody is sent home, we will request that they're tested. We will request that they contact public health, they contact their physician, they be tested, and then we will be tracking that very closely for anybody who's exposed or anybody who tests positive.
Nita or Dr. Rummel or Dr. Hall, we have kids in school right now in Jumpstart. Can you tell a little bit about what that looks like? I spoke at the last meeting, I hadn't seen the classroom, but as I came in the meeting tonight to come into the meeting live, there's markings on the floor, just maybe people would find that helpful.
As far as spacing?
Yeah, just to tell people kind of, because I feel kind of, we have a dry run, so.
Yep, well, thank you. I was speaking in, Dr. Rummel probably has a little bit more, Dr. Hall. We've been working constantly with Mr. Curtis and with Heather to put things in place. The teachers are amazingly creative. We have some teachers who are using hula hoops to help kids know what their space is. We have inexpensive ways and visuals to help kids stay in their space, but also give them some movement. We have a teacher who's putting sensory dots outside that kids can take walks, they can take sensory breaks. We had an administrator had a wonderful idea to put 2 desks together. So a child or a table, you split it in half with a visual, and a kid sits on one side in the morning, the afternoon kid sits on the opposite side. And so they're never crossing paths in that. So we're doing a lot of things district-wide to try to do as much as we can to minimize the risk. There's always going to be risk. We can't get rid of all that, but we're doing the very best we can to minimize that and to keep our students and our staff as safe as possible.
Thank you, Nita, and thank you. I just think people, if you're not out and you're not looking to see the good things that are going on, you're going to miss them. And I want people to know that. Thank you.
So Nina actually brings up a perfect point with the asymptomatic carriers. That's exactly why we have to exercise social distancing. The motion that's on the floor specifies 3 feet required. That's what we've been talking about doing at the other schools, given our reopening plan. Personally, I'd like to see 6 feet, but I figure 3 feet is something we could all get on board with.
We're following the ISB guidelines, the ISB and IDPH guidelines for the buses.
I don't know how we can guarantee anything on a bus. I mean, I just really don't. I understand it. I want to, but it doesn't make practical sense. We've not run any of that by Nick. But 3 feet, does that mean you only use every other seat? Because the seats are closer than 3 feet together.
We don't even have specific enrollments, let alone by bus.
I mean, I get the sentiment here, but I just don't see where it's workable. Anything else? We're doing the motion on the table. Is there any discussion on the motion?
And I apologize, I ran out. Could the motion be repeated? I had to use the restroom.
Sure. The motion on the floor. Sorry.
Yes,
Do you want me to
please.
repeat it? The motion on the floor says that we will maintain 3 feet separation among students on buses at all times, and that and students will be screened for COVID symptoms before entering the bus.
Okay. Any other discussion on the motion?
Can you email that line, please?
And for that, we have no estimated budget.
No.
No.
Yes, I will email that.
All right, ready to work.
Okay, can we have a vote on that motion, please?
Schultz?
Yes.
Giles?
No.
Larson?
No.
Keith?
Yes.
Hensky? Yes. Center?
No.
McCoskey?
No. Anything else under COVID?
I actually have a question. I feel like we've asked this a million times, but we keep asking in different ways. What is this social distancing that we're saying is going to happen with the plan we have on the table, just for the regular classroom spaces? Because I feel like I heard that we're not going to be able to maintain social distancing with the 2-day plan.
We're following the guidelines from the State Board of Education and the Illinois Department of Public Health, which were issued on June 23rd. I will pull those up and read what those say. Give me a minute here.
No, I'm just asking what we're actually going to be able to do in the room. I understand it says social distancing as possible. I'm just asking how much will we actually be able to have?
Size of the room and the number of kids.
I guess the reason I'm asking is because I'm really struggling with figuring out if we can't maintain the social distancing that's recommended. I feel like we should keep kids safe, and I think we should reduce the risk of liability for the district. But if we're going to choose not to maintain the recommended spacing, then why are we paying the cost of doing all the partial schooling? It seems like if we're not going to maintain social distancing and we're just going to interpret that to mean, if possible, means we're not going to be able to do it, why we would not go back.
Maybe you should come in and inspect the classroom with Lindsay and see how it might be set up.
Do you pull up the recommendation?
No, I didn't.
No. Okay, that's fine.
I think one of the reasons Colleen is asking, though, is we need to make a firm statement to the public about what our minimum spacing is. My understanding was that we were committing to 3-foot spacing. Am I wrong?
I think we were committing to 6-foot spacing, right?
Social distancing as much as possible and as much as can be expected is what the EB guidance and IDPH say. Social distancing in that definition is 6 feet. But we've been very honest and upfront and transparent and candid and have said that, especially in this building, we have little kids here who will need modeling and teaching and direction, and as much as we possibly can, there's going to be times when they're not 6 feet apart. That's the reality of a school. We can't escape that. That's why the ISB and IDPH guidance is worded in the manner in which it is.
And that's why we provided choices for people.
And I
They
think-
can choose to come or not.
And I think Nicole said in the last meeting that the goal was to do 3 feet as best we can. And then I think that's the goal. And we're always going to end it with as best we can. If we can do 6 feet in some of the rooms in some circumstances, some kids, we'll do more as best we can. But unless we're going to glue kids to the floor, which I don't recommend we try, we can't guarantee this thing. Any other questions on COVID?
We talked a little bit about, I don't know, it was in a memo a couple weeks ago about teachers being concerned about sick leave. And I wanted to suggest that we might provide unlimited sick days to teachers after they use their FFCRA and their 2021 allocated days.
We're going to talk about that a little later tonight, if we get that far.
Is that on the agenda?
It's on the agenda.
Okay, I just want us not to encourage employees to come to work sick, so.
Absolutely.
Thanks.
All right, the item we added to the agenda, policy discussion, Colleen.
That is me. I wanted to suggest a policy that I would ask to be on the next agenda, but I just wanted to suggest it here. And so this will be policy 6330. And this policy came up because I heard a few things from students today and over the weekend that made me feel like this was needed to be done sooner rather than later. And I will read you part of it and then I'll email it to you, the relative or the part that changes things. And it says the superintendent shall maintain a uniform process at the high school to calculate on at least a yearly basis each student's grade point average, as well as a system of Latin honors, summa cum laude, magna cum laude, and cum laude for each class. Students will not be ranked, and criteria for Latin honors will be absolute and not comparative. There's a section about honors and awards too. And I have spoken about this policy with people before, fellow board members, Lindsay, both in person and over the phone, and with Chad. I know there's a lot of support for this policy, but there was a question about timing. And I understand that, but I think that the pandemic creates a need for this policy to be implemented now rather than down the road. And I think it's because policy is what the board does. And I want to be very clear that I'm proposing that the policy is the what, which is Latin honors instead of class rank, but it does not attempt to micromanage or delve into how things are determined. Lindsay and Chad would have the authority to determine all of the specifics. How will the GPA be weighted? Will it be the AP and honors be different? Is there dual credit? What's the GPA to have Latin honors? They can determine all of those things at their discretion, and nothing in this policy takes away their ability or authority to administrate grades. We need to have a detailed discussion of the benefits of the policy at a future meeting, but I wanted to state a few brief reasons that I think we need to have this policy. The first one is that Lindsay's clearly communicated the goals to the district over the past few months. And we continue to think those are our goals for next year. And at the top of the list is the physical and emotional health of our students. And COVID is creating so much uncertainty and stress in our world that I think relieving some stress for students will certainly improve their emotional health. And emotional health is a reason even before the pandemic. In addition, there are so many difficult decisions to make with all the challenges of COVID. And I think our administrators did a great job of handling these challenges. But one decision that was made was to not have any grades for the spring term. Eliminating ranking will permit the district to follow the ISBE and do no harm to students by that decision. Students missed out on a semester of grades and AP honors points, and that's going to harm certain students and benefits others, which wouldn't keep us in line with do no harm. And that's not a subjective statement, that's just math. There's other reasons in addition to the pandemic that we would benefit from having Latin honors rather than class rank. One is that good schools with a lot of high achieving students can actually harm students by having a ranking system. There are college programs, for example, there's some at the U of I that don't admit students who don't have a class rank in the top 10%. And so at Mahomet-Seymour, that means that I've heard of students with 4.6 GPA that can't be admitted to a program because they're not in the top 10%. Without a ranking, they would be evaluated in other ways. We have the same for other students. There's students that have come to us and said they wanted to apply for a scholarship for a trade school, and their 3.4 GPA gave them a rank that was unacceptable because 3.4 is not in the top 50% of the class. In addition, class rank also discourages students from taking courses based on interests rather than their value towards class rank. The differentiation between students can come down to thousandths of a point. And this will encourage students to take classes they may not have interest in just to earn the GPA points to achieve a higher class rank. We also want students to benefit from working together with their fellow students rather than having maybe even a subconscious incentive to not collaborate because someone else doing better means they will do worse. I want to make sure to note that this is not a let's give everybody a participation trophy proposal. We certainly should recognize and celebrate students who demonstrate the highest academic achievement. This policy would allow us to have high-achieving students who are honor cords at graduation, sit in a special place, get their diplomas first, whatever Lindsay and Chad decide. This change simply sets forth the standard for celebrating students in an absolute way, where they're competing to meet a standard rather than against a fellow classmate. So I would appreciate it if we could put that on the agenda for action next month. Thank you.
I can tell you this as just as a person, I don't like, without seeing everything in advance, I hope that, I mean, I'm going to be sure you're going to have that so that's in the packet, right? Because like what you said, I didn't get all of it at all. So
I'm going to write the entire statement I will provide to you. I just wanted to have the opportunity to express myself because it has turned out when I ask to do something that sometimes people decide to speak for me and speak for my motives and what I intend to say, and I wanted to say it myself. I will certainly provide it in writing to everyone on the board. Thank you.
thank you. I had a hard time following along, and I don't really think I'm disregarding it, but there was a lot of information that you obviously put time into, and I couldn't follow all of it.
I believe Dr. Hall has something to add.
Yeah, so Chad's been working on this with his division leaders for months now, and was going to do a presentation at our August meeting. I didn't realize you had plans for this policy, Colleen, which I think it's timely. I don't know if it aligns with what he's recommending, and that's for the board to figure out. But this has been on Mr. Benedict's radar for some time. He's been working on it, and will be here on August 17th with the presentation.
Very good.
Great.
All right. Communication from visitors. Is there any communication at this point? Hearing nothing. This time a closed session is needed to discuss collective bargaining negotiation matters between the public body and its employees and representatives, or deliberations concerning salary schedules for one or more class of employees. Basically, item or reason number 2 under reasons for closed meetings. Is there a motion to go into closed session for that reason?
Could you add personnel to that list, Max?
We'll add personnel to that list.
Thank you. I just have a quick statement. Nothing
Which is item 1.
So I'm, Ken, Megan, and Colleen, I'm forwarding you the link right now.
That was my question. Thank you.
Thanks.
We got a motion and second to go into closed session for reasons number 1 and 2. Is there a motion to be there?
So moved.
Is there a second? Second. Discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Keith,
Yes.
Larson,
Yes.
Hensing,
Yes.
Henrik,
Yes.
Schultz,
Yes.
Jones,
Yes.
McComb.
Yes, if you're listening on the live feed over Bulldog TV, we appreciate you being with us tonight. When we come back from closed session, we are not anticipating any further business. So thank you for being with us tonight, and have a great night. Board members, you can log off and then log back in on the email, on the link that Dr. Hall just sent. Thanks, everyone. And if you're part of the public signing off, thanks for being with us tonight.